Unmute everyone, Nickatina. You fucking suck.
Hello?
Andre, you're still muted.
Hello? Welcome to the first show of the Four Nerds.
Yes.
So we are yet to start this without a hiccup because I think it's happened 4 straight times now. Where
No, I did a good job. Okay.
no, you didn't.
I think I did fabulous.
I at least unmuted everybody.
Yeah, I mean,
You had the overlay on, and so did Ryan as well.
At least it wasn't like.
What? No way. That's not how it came across. It came across very professional
Lord.
and put together. Anyhow, guys, so welcome to the show.
2 minutes in, and we're just now
Minutes
starting
in.
the show.
2 minutes in. We're more like 6 minutes from the start time. But guys,
gosh.
so welcome to the show, you guys. We have a really good show lineup for today. We have 2 awesome guests. Is Andrew Dyce and Stephen Colbert from BvS by the Minute, and also their new podcast, which is Justice League by the Minute, which we'll talk about later on in the show. We're also going to watch over the or take a look at the Justice League trailer that just recently came out that we've all seen about 500,000 times.
We shall watch over it and protect it.
And protect it, yes. Watch it over and over and over again. But before we get to the guests, you guys, how are you guys doing? Are you guys excited to be here? How was your week?
I'm never excited to be here. It's a waste of time.
We put so much work into this, and still,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the worst 2 hours of my week.
I don't look forward to
I could be doing something so much more productive. I could be illustrating my comic book, and yet here I am. You're welcome.
Here you are. So, and before we get started, let's take a look at the chat and see who's here right now. We have Flash with a Flash Bolt. We have Mad Bids. You guys know who that is? I don't know who that is. We have El Capadesiam saying, "Hey, Mad." He's talking to Matt. We have ACS saying,
pass.
"Yeah,
Yeah,
tell
you
us
tell
that."
Oh, thanks, Anthony. Keep going.
We got Andrew Gasali in the chat. We have Gavin the Geek in the chat saying, "Yo, yo, yo,
Yo,
yo, yo."
yo.
We got Flash saying, "Here we go." Colbert.
That's Colbert.
It's so windy
And it
over
must be
here.
cold.
It's wild. So the weather has been an issue all over the country. It seems like I know because Ryan over here lives in Texas, and Texas, for the most part, has been shut down due to bad weather and power outages. Is that right?
Yeah, I might actually lose power during the show.
Okay, that's
the
fine.
last show I was flickering, so I don't know. I'm hoping to stay here. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, we just had an ice storm over
You have your
here.
heat boosted up, so just in case it does.
I do, yes. I
have my heater on right
heating up
now.
the
That's
house,
great.
So yeah,
It's
definitely.
like 60 degrees out here, I think, something like that. Anyway, so it's we got Mr. Purchase Fiddle saying what's up.
What's
We got
up?
Patrick saying hi, Justice
Going
League.
on?
Hey, I like that. We got Abby saying, "Hey, y'all." We got Caleb Mitchell in the chat saying,
Yo.
"Hello."
Hey, what's up, Caleb?
Abby.
Caleb Mitchell, who's actually a member of the Nerdy Many Ways broadcast.
Yes, indeed.
Oh,
Oh, there we go.
What's
Yeah,
up,
he-
Caleb?
Nice.
and he's the newest one, I believe, or one of the newest ones.
He's one of the newest. The newest one is Saggy Melons.
Saggy Melon.
Saggy
Good,
Melon.
Saggy?
Actually, she loves to go by Draggy Melons.
Saggy Melons.
Hey, it's approved.
The
She
Flash, we
approved
are
it.
going to bring on Colbert and Dyce in just a few minutes. I just want to say what's up to the chat, and then we'll go right into, well, we'll talk to, anyhow. We'll move on from there. New trailer coming out March 1st.
We'll never move
so
on.
that is a rumor that we've been hearing as well. So we'll also talk about that.
I believe it will be in
Fatalities,
March.
fatalities all up in this bitch. All right. You're all from mute. That's from earlier. We got Krypton Cage saying,
What's up, man?
What up, Krypton?
How's it
Right
going?
on. And yes,
Good
they
to
can
see
hear
him.
me now. Okay, so guys, let's welcome our guests of the day. There's none other than Stephen Colbert
What's up,
and
dude?
Andrew Dyce of BvS by the Minute. What's going on, you guys?
Hello.
Did you unmute them?
No. Now, well, Andrew's still muted by himself. He did that to himself. I didn't do that.
You sure? Are you sure?
I am. Stephen's not even muted. He can talk. He's just choosing not to.
For once.
Oh, there you go.
We just got to get him started. That's all.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what's up, guys?
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good, good.
All right, man.
You know,
Our show's being run by Andre, so it's
yeah.
it's not going well.
Yeah, we run smooth and efficiently every time, every day.
Oh,
So talk to us a little bit about BvS by the Minute. Now this is a podcast you guys started about a year ago, I want to say, or was it longer than that?
It's okay, 2 years. I think
2 years.
January
I
2018
think so. Yeah.
was the
2
first,
years.
or 2019 was the first episode.
2019. Okay, sweet. So
Um,
you guys are midway through the movie now?
Yeah, yeah, about
And
where
so 2 more
time.
years,
In
and you'll
2
be
more
done.
years, yeah.
And then you've got the Justice League movie, which is
Yeah.
4 hours. So
That's 5 years of your lives
you
right
won't
there.
you won't be done until Justice League 2 and 3 come out in theater. So
Yeah, something like that. It's we love doing the show, but also every once in a while we're like, wow, this is a lot of like commitment.
they're like, well,
Yeah.
we can't stop now.
Yeah.
No, it is kind
Like
of
I'm-
realizing like, oh, this is just what we do now.
Yeah.
We're just gonna
Yeah.
always be doing this now for
Yeah.
the for
I feel like I'm
so
questioning my life choices at the
Yeah.
moment.
Well, at the same time, though, a lot of it was, as two like passionate fans of these movies, we were just kind of like, always like chatting about it anyway, and it was one of those things that I mean, we spend way more time doing it now, but also it was one of those things where it was like, we talk about this enough that maybe we should just like record it and put it into a podcast,
Yeah, yeah.
and end up making it this useless like. How does nobody understand how this scene works? Like all the time.
So how did you guys come up with the idea of doing it by the minute?
I think that was Dice's pitch originally.
Yeah, I think it started as a joke because we're talking back and forth constantly about the movie.
As
and
most
saying,
cool
you
things
know,
end up starting.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that it was we would constantly be repeating the exact same things, mainly because like the people talking about the movie would just keep repeating the same like inaccurate or like kind of dishonest things that were, oh, and it also isn't it silly how X doesn't even make sense. And it would get to the point where Steven and I would just like, copy and paste those things to each other. Where it was like, I know at this point, it's like, who cares? At some point, we should really talk about this movie. And then I, as a joke, said like, I'm just pitching it, Batman v Superman by the minute, where we literally break down every single minute to get straight everything that is actually in here and everything that's happening, because it seems like the way people were talking about it, it's like they saw a different movie than us. That the only way we could actually end up talking about all of the things that we wanted to talk about was if we went at such a slow pace, we forced ourselves to not miss anything.
Now, has there ever been an episode that's in the past that you're like, oh man, I have this new epiphany, or I found something else out that was new that we just kind of missed or didn't put in that episode that I really wish we could have?
I think the closest we've come to that was when we spent a whole episode trying to figure out what the swastika looking symbol was on the truck in the nightmare.
Oh, and then yeah,
And then it turns out that there's concept art that it's 4 Superman symbols in like an octagon. Like
So the
kind of
epiphany wasn't in the recording. It was afterwards where we went, oh, we're morons.
Yes, you
Yeah.
talk about for hours. Like, okay, so what is this? Could
Yeah.
this lean towards this thing? And afterwards, you're just like,
Yeah.
son of a
I mean, I
gosh,
thought
dang it.
our analysis was pretty good, and I still I like the conversation we had, and I think we still added a lot of value to it because we were talking about the symbolism and the symbols that it looked like. It's obviously supposed to look a little bit. It's supposed to espouse the look of a swastika, in a way. And that's very much kind of the way we approached it. It just would have been nice to be able to, at the time, say, oh, and here's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Which we were able to do. I think the next episode, it was a couple episodes later where the camera pans back by and you can see it. And we're like, oh, and there's that thing we talked about. Here's what it is.
yeah.
So it worked out. But
I think obviously the minute that is like, I'll try to give you guys an original one. The minute that I so often go to because it's so prominent is that Lex's plan in Africa doesn't just take exactly 60 seconds, but it is is it 17 to 18? Like it opens with KG Beast's first gunshot and then ends with the doors opening and it's done.
Yeah.
And we were like,
Move out.
how would that ever happen? But I think the biggest epiphany moment was when, and it's been the most fun thing, is when we were watching, there's the party scene where Bruce's like little leech is running in the basement and he's kind of just busying himself. And he hears Alfred, and we're watching it and we only realized watching it a minute at a time that when Alfred says it's done. Everything's done. It was when Mercy, like Lex's bodyguard, at the exact same moment, comes up to Lex and says, like, hey, I need you over here right now. You're busy, so that Bruce can leave. And then we're like, how did we not notice that this Lex's plan is being played out in front of us, like beat by beat? It's so obvious that now when I watch that movie, I see her come walking up and I think, how did I ever not realize that both her and Alfred were directly relating to each other, what was going on? And that speaks to just the layers of stuff that's going on.
And that's the type of thing that clued us off to like the theory that that Lex started the fire in Mexico to draw Superman away. Because there's a bunch of stuff like that about his plot where when you kind of get down to this macro level, you're like, oh, wait, so Mercy comes up to take Lex away from Bruce to allow Bruce an opening to go get the bug.
Wow.
And it's like, oh, wait, so Lex is literally just like guiding Bruce along this path this whole time.
Like, that's one thing that a lot of people really misunderstand about Batman v Superman is just how complex and how really intelligent Lex Luthor's plan is in that movie. There's actually a really great video that I watched. I can't remember whose YouTube channel it was.
Probably
where they. No, never Ryan's. But they talked about all the different steps in Lex Luthor's plan, all the way down to like Doomsday's creation, like all the different variations and how like, oh, this didn't work out, so we went in this direction. Like Lex Luthor literally adapted his plan throughout the entire film to fit what was happening with our main heroes, which you don't normally see very often in a superhero film, and it's very refreshing.
I think that's why it doesn't get noticed, is because it's so perfect that even when Steven and I had established that, we're watching the scene with the underground fight where Bruce puts his phone down next to the Russians so that he can clone him,
right.
Which we use as the episode art for our podcast. And it was only like halfway through the episode we were talking where we realized, oh, Steven, this Lex wanted him to do that. Like KGB knew he was cloning his phone. Oh man. And that was when we started talking about how he must be like texting him emojis like, oh my god, OMG, he cloned it, OMG.
He's like, LOL.
Yeah, then you would
That needs to be an evil laugh emoji.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, and then I think the biggest thing for us has been, as Dyce mentioned, like the Lex's plan in Africa starts with like the gunshot and ends with the doors opening. And as we were working through it, I mean, the minute by minute was kind of an arbitrary, like that's just the smallest logical segment to break it into. And I think our assumption was, you know what, we're going to cut off in the middle of sentences all the time. But you know what, I think we can make it work. We'll figure it out. And not only was it like not very commonly a problem, but it was, I mean, from the opening credits up through, I mean, the first 20 minutes, basically continuously, it was like you could cut out every single minute, and on its own, it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yeah, like its own story. And we started getting like the Pepe Silva meme from the Philadelphia show. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
It's all
where it was just like this conspiracy of like Zack did this intent, like Zack planned this movie a minute at a time, and we just accidentally discovered this. And so we got to talk to him on Dave's
I saw that
on Dave's show when Zack was on, and that was like the one question we had was like, we have a million questions, but
are we insane?
Are we insane for thinking this? And basically he was like, yeah, no, I mean, I in order to make sense of the movie, I put it together that way because that's the only way like he can kind of comprehend it, which made us feel a lot more sane, I think, because now we can actually kind of include that in our analysis instead of spending all the time being like, this was intentional, right? I think it was intentional.
So if he'd have been like, no, I don't do that.
Oh yeah, we would have been like,
or he was like, damn, that really sounds. Yes, I did.
Yeah,
you guys don't plan the whole time.
And you mentioned like again looking at it minute by minute and how there's always a beginning of a story and an end. It's the same thing visually with BvS too. Like you look at almost every single frame. Like I've talked to so many people who, even if they dislike the movie, they're like almost every single frame in this movie could be a cool poster. And that's like the beauty of the visual directing that Zack Snyder does, that every single moment just feels like it should be its own little moment in time that you could frame on your wall and have as a piece of art.
Yeah, well, there's so many little things too, which I mean, not that people didn't realize there were Easter eggs and visual references and stuff in here, but I mean, I think one of the memes, like the ongoing memes we have, is horse talk, because as everyone knows, there's like all these different horse like homages or like motifs in the movie of horses showing up, but it's like, the more we watch it, it's not just like a horse. It's on Lex's desk. There's a horse that has its hind legs broken off, and and there's a horse head on the wall. And then when the one that like blew my mind was when Wallace Keefe goes to see June Finch for the first time in her office. There's a horse behind her, and it's standing so that the back half isn't visible. The legs are like behind a book or something on the shelf. Like right as Wallace comes in, he's like, "He made me half a man."
Like a horse.
Yeah, have a horse.
So do you think, was that like set designer, like Zack? I'd like to put some horses everywhere, and I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Well, he has a lot of horses in general in a lot of his films too.
Well, there's so much of the like the layering of the themes going on here that it seems like if you worked with Zack on a movie, you would want to know about all of that stuff anyway. The one that blew my mind was when we started talking about the horses. There are a few obvious ones earlier on where one walks by Bruce after the attack, and those ones stand out. But it was when we broke down that first shot of going into Lex's office where we were like, okay, we got to pause this because there's so much on the screen. And then massive on the side of the frame is this huge white marble horse head with a sheet tied over its eyes. And I was like, I'm falling off my chair. You know, we need to start over and do an entire minute on what that's supposed to mean. That Lex is keeping this in his office, a blinded eye. And then another one, a sickly horse right next to him, I think next to the bourbon.
Well, and then he makes a Paul Revere reference to June Finch, like compares her to Paul Revere, right? Riding in the Night, and then when she dies, is like bookended by there's a horse that's revealed right before, that's like behind her right before she like leaves her office or whatever. But then also when the Capitol explosion, there's a horse that rears up on its slow motion, and so it's like Paul Revere is like, I don't know, we like the horses are a thing that people picked up on. I remember when it was in theaters originally, but we're seeing ones that I haven't confirmed if any of them are even new, but they're ones that I never knew about before that are just tucked in the little corners of the screen and all over the place.
Yeah, I know that like when Anthony and I were where were we? Over at Enosh's place. We were watching Empire Strikes Back. We were counting snakes that were in Dagobah. Yeah, I think we counted like 8. It could have been Reno Reed snakes, but we're like, there's
literally.
snakes.
I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden Ryan's just like, snake number 3, snake number 4. And I was like, did I ask you? No.
But that's weird though. There's a lot of snakes there.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I can't remember if you guys got to the scene. Because again, I've seen a couple episodes here and there, but if you guys ever got to the scene with Bruce Wayne's dream of going to his parents' crypt, one thing that always stood out to me, and you guys probably covered this, and I'll have to go back and see, but one thing that always stood out to me is that stained glass window that he looks at just before seeing his mother's grave. And
another one of our dumbest moments, I think. What we didn't realize.
No.
Well, one thing that I loved about that scene, though, is that you look at the stained glass window, and it's this guy in armor who's like looking down in a burning city, and it's like a guardian angel of a city that eats itself alive. And then you transition to the man-bat creature that attacks Bruce. It's almost like the stained glass is what Bruce thought himself to be, and the man-bat is actually what he's becoming on the inside. I thought it was very, very interesting last time I watched BvS, and I was just like, dude, that is meta.
Well, and I think the thing that I picked up on that minute also, that just from taking the time that I hadn't put together before either, was the beautiful lie, is that what is in Martha's tomb is supposed to be the inspiration for Batman, this heroic figure that fixes everything by being a hero. But that's the beautiful lie, is that doesn't fix everything, it doesn't make everything better. What's actually in Martha's tomb? A bat demon. It's I mean, I remember that one we spent quite a bit of time talking about the painting and the tomb and the blood and just
that one I think really is where, and I think it was from what Stephen was saying about, it was the minutes around it too, that we ended up talking a lot about Bruce's like morality and where he fit into this and whether he was corrupted or not. And that was the minute where I think we ended up, like, our takeaway was this is him dreaming. And in his dream, it is that beautiful lie. But when he goes into the crypt, there's the stained glass window, which it's Superman's colors, even though it is what he thinks of himself as, slaying the beast, which he's going to literally do later in the movie, that exact pose. And he thinks it's him, but in his dream, it's Superman, and he's walking by it, and it's like his subconscious is saying, "This guy is good. This guy he's not the demon here. The demon here is the bat that is eating you." And to Steven's point, the first thing he does is he wakes up and turns and grabs a bottle of pills and washes it down with wine, because it's him trying to keep that. Yeah. He's trying to live in that trauma and not letting his morality, come to the surface, which again, paid off, which is another moment we didn't notice when he rounds the corner and sees Superman.
Yeah, I was gonna say
their first meeting, that he punches the brake, and him punching the brake in that moment ended up becoming kind of a hinge point for the entire arc of his story throughout the whole movie. That there was still enough good in him to want to stop.
Right.
Not squeeze the fist together like his dad and hit the gas, but considering everything that happened after that.
Yeah, exactly. And then after that moment, though, it's come up a number of times, because it's what Dyce will always bring up is that this is him like regretting that. Not that if he's kept his foot on the gas, he wouldn't have made a difference against Superman. But mentally, though, he hesitated. That finally he was face to face with the man he wanted to kill.
It shows his character.
Instinct was to hit the brake. But then after that moment, especially after the Capitol bombing, that's where he's like, no, I'm not that person anymore.
Never wavering again.
I'm never hesitating again.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting.
What was the most? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I never picked up on the whole break thing before, but go ahead, Andre.
I was to say, out of all the minutes that you guys have done so far, what was the most compelling set of minutes that you did where you felt like, wow, this is like the most, like, this is the deepest conversation we've ever had?
Well, we had, it's hard to know based on like what's most fun versus like the deepest, because like we had Tim Rigby on, who was the stunt coordinator for the Batmobile chase. And that was really fun just because he broke down he built the Batmobile, basically. Him and Patrick Tatopoulos designed it, and talked about how all the stuff that went into building that and how they designed the scene. And so that's kind of fun to like geek out about and learn about. And then we had Rich Citron on to do a few minutes of the nightmare and the one-shot fight in that. And that was really cool to kind of get his perspective on. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff behind the scenes with that. Like he basically pulled an all-nighter beforehand, and
he's exhausted.
And
when he talked to us, he was like, "Yeah, I probably could have done better with that." And I was like, "You're telling me that fight scene in the warehouse could have been better? I don't believe it."
We're like,
what we said was that he's like the tiredest Batman is in this entire movie is the nightmare. So for him to just be like at the end of his rope but still going, I thought the tiredness kind of played into the character.
Yeah,
but then right after that the Superman coming down in with the soldier, the Superman stormtroopers and the three characters tied up, and him killing Bruce. I think that might have been one of the most dense like visual metaphor minutes that we've broken down. That in Lex's office. I know that Lex's office is a treasure trove of.
That was the Four Horsemen. We got. I quoted the Bible in that episode.
Whoa! It's so deep into this. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I had my big epiphany reading Wikipedia. I think when you say the deepest, though, it was one of the most criticized, and I think Steven and I had talked about it a bunch before we started the podcast, where it was the opening attack in Metropolis and the 9/11, like the September 11th imagery that was going on. It was when we were talking and we realized there are people who are 19 or 20 now who were not alive when that happened.
Right.
And that was one moment where I thought, oh, this conversation we're having might actually have some like value, timeless value to people who come to this later, because they might look at that and think, I saw 2012. I've seen, and all these movies where the cities end, and we had a chance to talk that the way that this is depicted is so distinctly calling on people on the phone, calling each other from in buildings. The big criticism that, the one criticism I saw was everyone saying, "Oh, these idiots, staying in the building, and they need the guy to say the boss says we're out, then we go." And Steven, you were saying, people were told to stay where you are, stay in the building. We don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I think I brought up the Wall Street Journal from like October of 2001 or something like that, and read something that was, people were being like, no, we didn't think it was a big deal. We didn't know what had hit the other tower, and our boss said, stay at your desks. And
no panic, right?
And in retrospect, it's easy to be like, they should have run. But at the time, they were like, and that's how it's depicted in the movie.
When you're in a panic situation, like, there's no way you have the right frame of mind to know exactly what to do in that situation unless you've been through multiple times, which obviously nobody has been through that situation multiple times, or at least hopefully not anyway. Yeah. Unless it's some crazy person out there that I don't know about. But someone mentioned early in the chat, talking about their favorite scene of BvS being the opening of the movie. They were talking about
that was one of my favorite scenes. Is that it marries so well with the Man of Steel, and the way that it's edited online. You can just watch the sequence. I like that. I love it.
Well,
I think
what I'm referring to though is the part before that, where it's the funeral, where Bruce is running, and it's basically his dream. And what I love about that scene so much is that scene tells you all you need to know about Ben Affleck's Batman to understand his motives in this movie. Because again, the whole line, there was a time above, a time before, there were perfect things, diamond absolutes. Talking about I had rules before, I was this great protector of Gotham, but things fall, things unearth, and what falls is fallen. Meaning I had a terrible thing happen where, of course, Dick Grayson dies, and I fell from grace. I'm no longer that Batman anymore. And so, again, literally right there in the first, 2 minutes, you should understand, that this is the kind of Batman we're dealing with. And so I love that. I love pointing to that and saying, if you didn't understand Ben Affleck's Batman in this movie, you need to rewatch the beginning of the movie. It tells you right there.
Yeah. Well, and that whole section also, it's we didn't stick with all of these jokes because it got to the point where it would just be a little bit overbearing. But I remember in the beginning, I was making the joke a lot about, is this too obvious or too subtle? Because those are both criticisms that people would have against the movie, and it's the exact stuff that you're talking about. And not only does Batman say that explicitly in the minute, and we had a long talk about this is a narration, so is this him actively in the movie, or is this Bruce post Justice League, or at what point, or is this him at the end of the movie talking back about the beginning of the story? But visually in those scenes, though, also you've got he talks about a time above, a time before, then things fall, and the above, below, rising, and falling visuals are throughout every single shot in that. From the shot, I think it's the same shot that's from Watchmen, of coming out from over the top of the theater and looking down at the Waynes, and then you frame them from below, and then there's visually there's sparks falling, pearls falling. Bruce rises with the bats. He falls into the cave. It's
the pearl falls with him. Yeah,
and then one of the funniest criticisms I've ever heard was the whole why is there a pearl falling in the cave with Bruce Wayne? It's you clearly don't understand that's a dream, and reality is in his dream of meshing together. This is a pretty obvious thing.
It was funny too, is that when I one of the times I watched the movie, I watched like a million times now, but one of the times I watched it was with my nephew, who was at the time he was 11, and he said the same exact thing. He was like, "Wait a minute, why is there pearls falling there? How'd they get there?" I was like, "It's what?" Just watch the movie. And then he also said to me, he goes,
"It does sound like you."
He was like, "Hey," he's like, "So wait, the bats are really lifting him up in the sky?" I was like, "No, they're not lifting him up in the sky."
In my dream,
I was like, "You're not paying attention."
In the dream, they took me to the light.
He literally says, "In the dream, they took me into the light."
Yeah.
So it's not. This is not how it really happened.
And also in that shot, directed by Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
It's like you are completely misreading everything that's happening. What a better time to say, "Yep, this has to be a Zack Snyder movie."
Yeah.
And I think going back to the city, the destruction of the city. But before I guess we're gonna watch this scene.
No, it was just it's you're actually talking about.
But
this is the whole Black Zero event. So I figured,
So in Hollywood, right after 9/11, they started make it to where you couldn't see destruction or city destruction because it would remind people too much of 9/11. So I think that's one of the criticisms that Man of Steel got, was because it was sort of like, you know, it wasn't that it was too soon, because this was 2013. This is like what, 12 years after the event. And you know, so they had to change stories and stuff like that in Hollywood for a while. But to see this, I think it was jarring, because it was like sort of like reintroducing this back to the masses. Like, this is something that could happen in a narrative. And a lot of people were like, oh, and that's why they changed the Avengers. And they were like, okay, we're not going to do the Sokovia thing where it's like, you know, everybody's going to get hurt and all that or whatever, you know. So I think that's one of the reasons why Zack got a lot of hate for Man of Steel, was because his was one of the first movies, or one of the major, because of the Superman movie, one of the major movies that kind of reintroduced that into, you know, mainstream general audiences.
Yeah. And we spent a long time in one of those minutes just talking about the question of is it right, or
is this
how
okay to do this? Yeah.
Like, how, like, it's a comic book movie. Is it okay to reference something so heavy in a comic book movie?
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really good discussion, because we obviously, like, we're fans of the movie. I think we approached it fairly, instead of, it wasn't like, oh, the haters just don't like it. But it's a serious question, I think, because
what makes it
later with when Bruce brings up, he like literally says lines from Dick Cheney when he says even if there's only a 1% chance, to treat it as an absolute certainty. And the way that they take the post 9/11 like military industrial complex and like United States world police sort of personas and that kind of stuff, and put it into a plot with Bruce where his trauma is driving that. I think that's a really a really important question. And I think kind of what we said is that not that every movie was required to, but almost there's an obligation where if there's something like this happening. I think that's something that Zack has said also, where it's almost worse to have destruction like that and pretend it's like dishonors the people that have been through destruction like that, to be like, oh yeah, there's destruction happening, but we're not gonna, you know.
Right. And I loved it. I love that, you know, like people were trapped underneath, you know, the concrete and all that, you know, and the guy lost his legs and stuff like that in BvS. And
it showed the gravity of the situation.
It sure did.
There's a consequence for these things. You know, if they're going to happen, there's some pretty harsh consequences for having that happen.
Where it actually lends a little credence to it is that, like you mentioned before, Stephen, is that these are comic book movies. And what really helps it out is that this is a fictional city, Metropolis. Fictional city, you know, Gotham. It's not New York like the Avengers is based in. You know, it's based in Metropolis. So it's a fictional city where you can kind of separate yourself from that sort of reality.
Yeah. Well, that's what's sort of crazy though, because later on in the movie it gets to a not so fictional city of Washington D.C.
Yeah.
And it was kind of crazy for us because there's a number of, like, we were talking about police brutality when Batman goes to the police station and they've got the police literally have posters. A cartoon making fun of the idea of using Batman as their enforcer, with the Gothamville Slugger. And then just a few minutes later, it was right at the beginning of January, was when I think we recorded the episode where Superman walks into the Capitol, like into the hearing room. We recorded that at like, I think it was maybe the first episode we had go up in 2021, and then we took a like 3-week hiatus or something because we had these next episodes where the Capitol explodes, and we're like, let's
let's not
cool down just a little bit. But everyone always talks about like Zack Snyder and the way he hits the zeitgeist, and how so many of these things are so like relevant, even though, you know, this movie is 5 years old, but all the stuff that we're talking about has current day implications. Like, we're not talking about stuff that was happening that was relevant at that time. We're talking about things that are happening now that still make the things that they're talking about relevant.
Yeah, I think that was the big thing for me that ended up. The resolution came a long time after we had that first conversation about is this okay? Is this okay for people to use this kind of story or start up this kind of conversation? Is it exploitative? That then we got to that conversation where Bruce is saying, you know, if there's a 1% chance, and for a lot of people, those were the scenes where they said this is absolutely wrong. Bruce Wayne is speaking totally unreasonable. No reasonable person that I want to look up to, or a person that is supposed to do the right thing, should ever say these things, should ever think this way, should ever do this. And we were talking and saying, okay, well, they did do this, so I guess we should have this conversation.
Yeah, the leaders of the free world. And not only that,
leaders of the free world had these words because, and that was where the conversation led. It's because what will you be willing to do when you are afraid and when you have so much, and that all ties back directly to that September 11th imagery. So that ended up being a case of, I think it was Zack Snyder saying there's a conversation around this that we haven't reckoned with in America uniquely, but I think that also around the world. And then watching that conversation play out where we were getting to that and saying, I don't know whose side I'm on, because Bruce, thousands of people have been killed.
Yeah.
Hundreds more.
and the thing we said at the time was it's hard because obviously the movie plays with this idea of good people can do bad things and bad people can do good things. And so sometimes we enter conversations where we're like, look, we don't want to label the things. We want to be careful with labels, especially when we're talking about someone like the fact that Dick Cheney is it's not even a similarity. It's they literally took his policy phrasing and stuck it into Batman's mouth. And I think the thing that I said in that episode is like not to say that in retrospect that was all the right stuff to do, but if you look at someone like Batman, or you look at like the leaders of the world at the time, the entire country, if not the entire world, looked at them and said, what can you do to make sure this never happens to us again? And that doesn't mean that they did the right thing, but everybody, or not everybody, but like people were behind those kinds of actions. People were begging for actions to make them feel safe.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful lie, right?
And then just going back to that whole 1% chance. I mean, I've always thought about like those great points, like kind of relating it to the real world and such like that. But at the same time, you also look at it just from the character standpoint, because like you see this Batman, right? He's obviously faced off against Joker. He's probably faced off against like Two-Face and all these other great iconic characters.
Whoops.
But he's never
faced.
He's never faced a being that's as powerful as Superman before. And so obviously in that situation, he's going to be a little unreasonable because he's terrified of the implications of that, because he's won almost every fight he's been in, and he's beaten every single villain he's come against. And if he has a Bane, then he's beaten that Bane to at least some degree. But Superman is a whole different animal.
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, it just makes sense from his first time meeting him. He's like, well, crap, this is terrifying. How am I going to handle this?
Well, and then even this line too, I absolutely love it. I'm just going to play this one short little line here so we don't get taken down. Here it is right here.
Not today. 20 years in Gotham, Alfred. We've seen what promises are worth. How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way?
I mean, there's just so much even in that. It's just like, oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah.
And there's so much theorizing you can do. Like, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but like one of the main things I love about this movie, along with everything else, is just how much. Good, Andre.
Our host.
It's just how much theorizing can come out of. Just how much theorizing can come out of watching this movie. Like Ray Porter said on one of the shows we had him on, is that Zack asks something of the audience. Right? He asks you to kind of think things through. It's not like he's making you fill in the gaps, but it's more like, here's this information, make some headcanon out of it. Make some stories in your own mind of what you think would be cool. Like if you think he's referencing Two-Face, then fantastic. Maybe think about that and maybe use your own imagination. That's one thing I think a lot of movies fail to do, is allow you to take things that from the movie and kind of run with it with your imagination.
He's talking about Catwoman.
Yeah, well, and he said,
"Wow, nope, not what I meant."
What he said when we asked him about if he planned each minute out in like minute chunks, just because of how cleanly it went, down to like I think my favorite example of that is if you watch Finch's speech where she says, "Superman needs to come to the Hill of the People and find out what happened in the desert and who's responsible and does he operate by our will or his own." And that entire speech is exactly 1 minute from, or that scene, I guess, starts with her saying that. As she says, find out what happens in the desert, the camera is on Lois. Then it says, does he operate by our will, or why is he here, or whatever? And it shows Clark. And then it says, does he operate by our will or his own? And it shows Lex looking at the kryptonite. Actually, it says, does he operate by our will? And it's on Lex, and the camera pans over, and she says, or by his own, as the kryptonite's revealed. And then it goes to Superman and Martha. And the last line of the movie is, you don't know this world a thing. Or the last line of that scene. And so, so speaking of like thematic continuity in this single scene, there's an entire, like, that's a trailer for the movie. That single minute gets the entire story of the whole movie. And it's just beautiful. And so so I started that because I was saying Zack told us that when we asked him about that, it's planned that way, but it's not something that, because we're the only people so far, at least, that have.
Yeah, you don't need to know that. Yeah,
like you don't need to know it, but also like you're not really going to notice it unless you break it down that granularly. But also, it matters to him to make that a rewarding experience. To say, look, if you go scene by scene, if you go frame by frame in my movies, I want that to add to your experience. I don't want you to find things that make you say, "Oh, I'll just ignore that because there's a continuity error or whatever." He wants to say, no, in the margins, I want it to be the rewarding rewatch value. And that's, I think, part of the reason, one of the biggest things people say about his movies is that you can talk about them so much and there's so much rewatch value because, we've both seen the movie, a million times, and it seems like every single minute almost there's something we notice either in the frame or just develop through our discussion where we say, I don't think I've ever heard that talked about before. And the fact that we can do that every episode and yet avoid too much repetition of the same ideas.
Yeah, I mean, well, and just to what you guys are saying, the 20 years in Gotham, like the little lines that when you stop and actually talk about them, like Alfred throwing down the newspaper and saying new rules was, okay, so they had rules. Like exactly, there were rules to what we're doing, to what this whole thing is, and now those are changing. And then the same prophet in the apartment building saying there's a new kind of mean in him, where we were looking at that thinking, like, does he mean like there's a new kind of mean? Like this guy knows about this thing and is saying, man, lately he's getting brutal, he's getting ruthless. Then that's just a case of how much more people aren't looking at, like how much more why Batman has been allowed to operate the way he has, because you get that sense of urban legend. You get that sense of like he's a rumor.
Sure. I think it kind of marries a little bit with the loss of Grayson. Everybody had to have known about him, and maybe they give him a little carte blanche because they're like, okay, we know this. He's no longer running with him. We don't, maybe they don't know he died, but they know he's not running with him anymore. Maybe he lost his edge or his way or whatever, and now he's, whatever happened, he's a little bit more brutal than he used to be. 20 years. I mean, that's a long time for a vigilante to be running around town, creating a reputation. So,
I do want to point out here, Perry White gets the best lines.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit about Clark Kent chasing the Batman.
We have a Perry White fan club and an Alfred Pennyworth fan club. I think probably.
Jeremy Irons Alfred is fantastic. About Perry White, I love his walk that he has after he says that line about no one cares about Clark Kent taking on the Batman. He almost kind of like, it's like he's proud of himself for saying that line. It always cracks me up.
It's such a great line, though, and how it reflects onto the story. I was just like, man, this is so awesome.
Well, people say that like the movie doesn't have enough humor, but every line that comes out of Perry White's mouth is a flaming zinger at Clark.
Crime wave in Gotham.
It's just it's so
very sarcastic.
Him and Irons both. I mean, Lex Luthor obviously as well, I think is where like Chris Terrio's script shines the most. But I think that the Perry and Alfred or Fishburne and Irons both have a Shakespearean quality, and the fact that they can take that Chris Terrio dialogue. And it's the type of thing that you can see someone like reading the script and saying it like mockingly as a joke, and like you can make it sound dumb if it's delivered badly. Like, to be fair, like the way that script is written, you've got to nail those lines, or it's going to be.
Well, this is you're talking about Morpheus and Simon.
Yeah.
I mean, Simon says.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
there's
a superhero movie where someone refers. The American conscience died with Martin, Bobby, and John.
Yeah.
To just say that in a superhero movie.
Yeah.
Knowing probably 70% of the audience is not going to know who they're referring to. That line will add so much more to Clark's characterization and his kind of bleeding heart story that he's on. If you do go out and find those things, that line I feel like is emblematic of, wow, this is not a, up and away, like it's just typical.
Yeah.
And I love, one of the most rewarding things about watching BvS for me is like when I'm watching or when I'm reading the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel at the same time as I read it or watch the movie, and there's the line in the earlier parts of the graphic novel, which of course is used to, like, it's kind of changed a little bit, but it's used in BvS, where it's like, I hope the next generation of Waynes will inherit an empty wine cellar. Not like there's going to be a next generation of Waynes. And I read that in the graphic novel I read the other night, and I'm just like, oh, yes, they used it. It's great.
Well, it's like everything that, and it's, again, Perry and Alfred both, they do two things. They either just lay into Clark or Bruce, whichever one it is, with just like the hottest insults ever, or they say something that's more sarcastic and then follow it up with like a scathing remark under their breath. It's like the two types of lines that they deliver. Is like
one thing that was definitely missing was Fishburne in Justice League.
Oh yeah.
Like what? Like I know Clark isn't around, but yeah, I mean he was definitely missed. So
I mean he got a significant screen time at the end of BvS with the death of Clark and going to the Clark farm for the funeral.
Yep.
Like you'd imagine like there was some kind of more implications with that, especially interacting with Lois and knowing her pain.
And he knew.
Yeah,
like, you could
exactly
say that he absolutely knew.
Like that's
He's a seasoned reporter, so.
But that's something that I think we've kind of reached a consensus on. I think on the pod is everyone in Smallville and Perry are like fully aware, and they just play along.
Yeah, they play along because
they know, and that's what's so that once you realize that, and you take all of Perry's insults and like the way he's constantly digging at Clark, and you realize that like that's him just silently or not silently at all, but that's him carrying on his part of the bit.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not even with a nod or a wink. It's just like, oh, this guy's Superman, and that gives me like carte blanche to just say whatever I want to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the line, like, it's like maybe some rich goon who has a thing for nerds.
Yeah. The way he says nerds is so like the lines are great, but the way he delivers them, they're dripping. But it turns him from like a total asshole into like, oh, that's actually like kind of endearing that he's like treating him like a nephew or something, even just constantly ribbing him and kind of covering for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Joey! He wanted me to pull this up, and I was like, "What comment is he talking about?" And I go back and I find it, and he says, "I'm mad that never had Alfred steam any of Bruce's shirts because then in the script you could say literally Jeremy Irons."
That's pretty good.
Yes,
That's a good one. That's a good one. But
on today's episode of BvS by the Minute, Jeremy Irons.
literally.
Yeah. Ben Affleck's going to be taking notes.
Yeah, we're excited because we're doing the next minute we record, I think, is a Jeremy Irons minute.
Nice.
I think it's a Jeremy Irons minute without dialogue, even though, which is kind of exciting. Those are the fun ones.
Oh, is it the one where he's like chopping up the wood after
he's bringing it in?
Oh, we talked
like
all about his outfit. He's got like his J.Crew catalog going on. Yeah,
the fact that he had never played Alfred before, but yet was still able to carry a dialogueless scene by himself speaks volumes to again the direction of Zack, as well as just the ability of Jeremy Irons to just pull it off.
Oh, he's a fabulous actor, and even we talk about how Perry had such a small role in Justice League in the theatrical cut. A lot of the lines and a lot of the scenes, obviously, we're going to see a lot more of that in Zack Snyder's Justice League. And then this line right here in the quote, if you can't bring down the charging bull, then don't wave the red cape at it. I mean, even in the trailer, I was like, wow, that's awesome. I remember
you cut that from Jeremy Irons. Like, how dare you?
That was a finished scene, and they were just like, got it.
I've been so in the hype for this movie. It's one of the things that, like, that you're excited for a Chris Terrio script, and you're excited for more Jeremy Irons, and this is not something that's escaped me the last 3 years.
What's up, Enosh?
Hoping that this movie would come. But it's one of those things where you don't fully remember, like what it's like, and then you see that and you're like, that's right. That's the kind of stuff that made BvS what it is writing like that and delivery like that, and you were missing both of those because you were having lines that were just kind of like it didn't make any sense, and then the actors didn't care about them, and like you replaced that with this like Shakespearean just over the top, but not like melodramatic dialogue. It's
I mean, even the other one in BvS, the red capes are coming. The red capes are coming. It's kind of a callback, but in a different way because it's a different character. So I mean, I don't know. I love the way it's set up. Like I said, these are rewatchable.
I definitely agree that when you're trying to watch, like the first time at least when I watch Justice League, not you, but when you're trying to watch Justice League, that when you see lines, like it's kind of like, oh no, and then you see scenes that happen like
something is definitely bleeding.
I mean, it just rips it right out. You're just like, oh, there. Anything you had going, you're like, oh no, forget it. This is crap. This is crap.
And even that last Batman one, it's funny because there was an interview that came up with Snyder recently where I think it was from Watchmen, where he was talking about, someone asked him about, like, they're like, this movie is pretty violent. And he was like, well, I think it's, as in this scene, you sort of have almost a responsibility. Like, violence is brutal and you shouldn't enjoy it. And if you do, like, you should feel bad about enjoying it. And I thought it was really important to portray it that way because this is really a power fantasy these people are participating in. And so we don't want you to watch that and be thrilled by this power fantasy. Like if you get in a fight in an alley, you're going to get hurt bad and have bones broken, and you're not going to be laying on the ground going,
it's totally true. Yeah.
And it was hilarious that came up, and I was like, oh my gosh, he literally said, you don't do this.
Yeah.
And then they did it.
They did it. And like Barcy brings up this line, hope was like your car keys. I mean, it's like, oh my God, and we can go into a whole thing with that.
Like compare it to any Terrio line, and like I feel like it sounds like it means something, but it doesn't mean anything. Any given Chris Terrio line means like 17 different things depending on like how you look at it.
Yeah, because I remember like going to see Justice League in theaters, and again, I had watched BvS the night before to try to prep myself. So okay, the follow up for this is gonna be tomorrow. This is gonna be great, and I get there and like no deep lines whatsoever, and I'm just like. I've mentioned this before, like I try to convince myself that there was something there, so I rewatched it multiple times, and I was just like, yeah, there's nothing here. There's nothing to go off of. I don't know what to do right now.
I've tried watching it multiple times, especially before the announcement of Justice League, and every time I'd watch it, it was like I was fooling myself. I was like, okay, so I would watch it and go, okay, which scenes were Zack's? I'm not even paying attention to the story. I'm just like watching how it's filmed, or I'm just like, maybe I'm missing something, and then no, it's a terrible movie. There's no way around it.
I think I went back and watched it for the first time since the theater. I didn't watch all of it. It was on TV, and my wife and I were like watching a movie. And when the movie ended, it was recording, like so I could go back and show her things. It was so much worse than I remembered it.
Oh, it was like because the theater romanticizes things.
Well,
so like
the graphics were horrible. My wife, her jaw just dropped because she never saw it after I said about it, and she was like in disbelief this many years away that like this is what
like, I mean, shit like this. You're like, oh my God.
The thing that really dooms it for me is the Themyscira scene. How saturated the grass is, how disconnected Steppenwolf looks, and I just look at it like this is like the worst thing I have seen in a long time. And I watched Where the Wild Things Are in theaters, so I've seen bad things.
Well, he framed everything. He framed everything in 4:3, and then they
cropped it.
And then they cropped it down to widescreen. And
Steven's not allowed to talk about aspect ratio. Steven's not allowed to talk about aspect ratio.
We're not on that right now. I can talk about aspect ratio.
The one perfect example of it. The perfect example that I saw. Nobody wants to hear him talk about aspect ratios. Trust me. Was because everyone talks about the effects teams on like Cavill and all that stuff, and that's awful. But the shots where I think they kill Steppenwolf and then everything like grows plants or like flowers.
Yeah, the whole Genesis kind of thing.
Leaves that they grow and get bigger and then stop because now it's just an object sitting there. That it's like, oh, every digital artist must be like, you bastards are making me not care.
My favorite, there's a shot in that final battle where Superman's hands are CGI'd on, I think, and each one is a different size. Like one of them is like way too big.
Oh my gosh.
And then, But the one that I always thought was like insane, it's like, how do they even let that in, is when the parademons jump on Steppenwolf to take him into the boom tube. And I noticed it, but it wasn't, I think after it came out on I looked it up on YouTube or whatever about it, obviously, and to like watch it freeze frame, and they look like the Capri Sun figures from those commercials. I mean, people would like drink a Capri Sun. That has the Matrix effect, right? Like the mirror. Yeah. Parademons, they have no wings. They're just like, they have no tech. Like literally, they're not rendered. Like the texture.
They just like rushed it. It was like, there,
they're just like shaped. It's like someone in a mocap suit, and then they just like made it like a metallic, shiny.
Yeah, they did like a PowerPoint like gradient fill.
Like, do you recognize that smell? It's fear. Oh, they can smell it.
They took alternate takes of Ray Fisher because he was in the pajamas, and they were like, just use him. And by the way, say booyah when you take him. So
Yeah. Oh,
like, ah, booyah. Ah.
Hamada's like, yeah, good job, guys.
Jeff Johnson's like, cut it. That's it. That's the one.
That's a wrap.
We nailed it, guys.
I saw I was on YouTube yesterday, and for some reason this came on my news feed, where it was this deleted scene from Joss Whedon, and it was literally Superman just like hovering down, like obviously lowered by a wire, and like looks to Bruce to his right, and he's just like, there was no audio to it, but you couldn't hear what he was saying. He's just like what's going on? I was like, my feelings exactly about the entirety of Justice League. Like,
I mean, there were so many things, and now that we've kind of moved on to Justice League at this point, there's so many. I mean, and look, I mean, I watch the vodka stream, all the time. You guys have gone in hours upon hours, and we've gone hours upon hours of talking about this as well. But when you look back at the designs and the things that they did to this movie, I mean. Oh boy! I mean, going from this beautiful design of Steppenwolf that we were supposed to get, now we're going to get, to this design. I mean,
Steppen Neeson.
I mean, and I've said it once, and I'll say it again.
Though. He's got a skull belt buckle.
Yeah, no,
that's the action figure, right?
Yeah.
That's like
look at it. Look at his hands.
The movie.
Look at his hands. Look how big they are compared to his forearm.
And you know what's funny? Is when you meet a tall person who's like very lanky, you can tell that they wear
talking about himself right now.
Well, yeah, like there's shirts that I have that are too small for me now because they only come up to here with the sleeve. That's what he looks like. His sleeves are not long enough for him. He looks like he looks like he outgrew that shirt 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
He also doesn't match any of the design language for any of the other apocalyptian.
Yeah.
Like,
it's not a skirt, it's a kilt.
It's a kilt. It's a kilt with a big skeleton.
Because the parademons, and they look like each other, and Cyborg looks like the parademons.
So out of place. I mean, I've said it before. I really do believe that this guy here, he belongs with these guys here, and on Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, except those
Yep.
Like, talk to any VFX artist, and they will tell you that what they did with
King
Davy
Shark.
Jones. Like, people still don't know how they made Davy Jones.
King Shark is a shark.
Yeah.
So
But it looks like
that's
the Hammerhead.
insult to
The Hammerhead looks like he's be asking, like, "Hey, have you seen my brother?" Oh,
There he is.
Hey, what's up, buddy? You ready to go? And compared to what we were supposed to get, I mean, this is absolutely beautiful. And for them to say, "Oh, well, this is too scary."
I'm looking for Captain Jack Sparrow.
But you're telling me this is not scary. This is terrifying in the sense that, like, it's just a horrible image to look at. I mean,
I hear the PS2 startup sound when I look at this thing. That's what I hear.
It's so bad. It's really, really bad. I mean, I don't know what the hell they were thinking with that. And I'm so glad that we're going to get the original design for Steppenwolf because, I mean, it's leaps and bounds better than what we got.
Well, I think one of the crazy things about that, as far as like, it's so I get like my mind melts every time I start talking about it because I can't get myself into the shoes of whoever was making those decisions just because it doesn't make sense. But
It's brilliant.
there's
They're gonna make so much money.
It's incredible.
There's decisions like this that are made, and it's for like it's almost like they get down to like the decision making process and forget why they got on that train in the first place. Because I feel like they were trying to make Steppenwolf more empathetic. But if you look at his role in the movie, I don't think Snyder designed him to be an empathetic villain.
No.
He's not a villain. We're supposed to care about his backstory or his emotions or anything.
He's supposed to be terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. His role is he is a tower of jagged spikes and muscle that kills people indiscriminately on behalf of
Slice off
Darkseid.
Amazon's heads,
It's like the ring wraith.
He's
It's
cutting
like
them
the
in
ring wraith
half.
in the Hobbit. Imagine if they were like, oh, the ring wraiths are too scary. We need to make them more like human-like, and so like turn them into old men or something. It's like, well, no, now they're not scary anymore because they have no dialogue. Their backstory is pretty thin. They're scary because they are murder machines that are there on behalf of the actual villain.
Yeah.
And they remove and they
on behalf of the audience, not the audience that I was even in, like to put that as the villain and to make that kind of stuff for the actual villains of the movie, like how little you must think of the audience to think, this is fine. Like this is all they care about. They
they're like, that'll work.
Yeah,
we just want them to have a villain that says, "Mother, you'll love me."
keep saying that. Yeah.
I know. Why does everybody keep saying that?
My axe is still wet with the bloods of your sisters, and like, there's no blood on your axe. Okay, there's no blood in it at all. So stop saying that.
Which is actually probably like one of the better lines that he came out with in that movie. But still, even then, it doesn't really, it just doesn't do it. It's just really bad.
Yeah.
And then like a side-by-side comparison of the two of them, and this is not even Steppenwolf with his full spikes. This is actually naked Steppenwolf, it looks like.
Naked Wolf.
Naked Wolf. Oh, this is semi-naked Wolf. But even that, I mean, if you saw both of them walking at you, I mean, who would you be more terrified of? It'd be obviously the guy on the right. But I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking with this one. This one.
The
really,
answer is they weren't.
They weren't. Yeah, they were just like, yeah.
And the crazy part about the story too is that change was made before Snyder even left.
Yeah.
Right.
So there is a world in which Snyder stays on, like hypothetically, all the way to November 2017, and that's the version we would have gotten. It's always a hard conversation to have because I don't mean to say that things happened in the best way possible because they didn't, in a lot of ways. But like when it comes to the movie, the only way this version of the movie would have ever happened in a million years is the way that it happened.
Right.
Them to screw up so badly. Yeah.
Like even the ultimate edition of whatever he would have made wouldn't have been this.
Right, because they would have had to re-render every single, animation, that included that character model.
Now, given I believe that I don't think that model is inherently the worst ever. I don't think it's as good as the one that we're getting. But one of the big things that you'll notice in the movie, and we this is something that we talked about when we were doing our trailer breakdown, is you look at like Aquaman's costume, for example, always looked kind of bland to me.
Yeah.
And it's busy. Yeah, exactly. And it just doesn't have any like texture to it. And what you notice in the way that Snyder like lights and shoots these scenes is that the thing about superhero costumes, especially like, something like Batman, it's kind of inherently goofy. You can't just shoot it straight on. Mm-hmm. And you see like a lot of the bad shots of Affleck in Justice League. It's so because it's often the way that he's lit. If you look at the way that how angular that cowl is, like look at even the BvS cowl, like the eyebrows and the scowl and like the scrunched nose is like kind of goofy. If you just look at it in like plain light and you imagine someone wearing that and being menacing, it's not. It's like hilarious. But you put some harsh lighting on it from like
right. You got like the nostrils on the side of the nose, and if it's lit, if it's then it looks ridiculous because his nose looks huge.
And the same thing applies to VFX, and so. Yeah. And so if you darken it up a little bit, you give some higher contrast to the armor and to the wrinkles in his face and maybe make his eyes a little bit more intense. That could be a somewhat more menacing, and make the voice not like a kindly grandfather. And that could be a
kindly grandfather.
I don't think it.
Do you have any Werthers?
I don't think it would be as scary as the one that we're getting in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but it just shows you. I mean, a lot of these, like, look at the Superman heat vision scene, and you look at how it's the exact same footage as him doing the heat vision in Justice League, but it's the color grading, the way they did the heat vision, the black suit,
everything,
etc. You take Snyder shot it both times. That is Snyder footage, but one you give it to one post production team, and they make some creative decisions, and it's bad, and so like that's why you look at like the notion of Joss Whedon is finishing Zack Snyder's vision. even if that was their intent, they would have failed. Even if they were trying to make it look because the only person that is going to deliver that vision is the person who has it in their head, and that's Zack. He knows how he wants it lit. He knows how to make those hard decisions, and everything was just kind of bland and like, despite being like oversaturated, it was like almost colorless. They took this gold.
Oh, it was very colorless.
Color, and everything is like pink salmon. Like it's
I mean, they would have had to really lean on the DP to help them out as far as like why lenses were chosen, why different lighting setups were put together.
They didn't bring any of them
cropping
back.
it down, so everything is like it's really unflattering cropping on everything, because the whole idea of the 4:3 is that you can have a single character dominate the frame. It's more heroic, right? You have a square image and you get more of the character in it, but also they're not swimming in a wide shot. What's up, Dyce? Am I going?
No, I mean, it goes to the artistry, right? Like, and the fact that Zack and like other directors.
Oh my god!
I started
talking
about
aspect ratio again.
I'm fine with the aspect ratio talk. I mean, but real quick before we get to the aspect ratio, we talked about, they're trying, they filmed these shots and they don't know the exact color grading that Zack was going to use. Yeah. I mean, you look at it and you look at scenes like this where you're like, okay, that obviously is not. There's the hands. Look at that.
Oh, what was wrong with his hands? Did he have mustaches on them?
I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that maybe they were clenched too hard and it made him look more like.
He looks too scary. He looks too angry.
It looks like he has to take a dump. He's constipated.
Look at his finger. Look at his pointer finger.
It doesn't make any sense. He looks like an alien. He looks more.
He is an alien.
And his
he is an alien, Andre.
He is an alien. Look how skinny Steppenwolf's wrists are. Put that picture up again. Look how skinny his wrists are.
His wrists would break.
You're telling me.
He didn't do this a lot.
You're telling me that is. Oh my gosh. Shoot me in the face.
You love me and my monstrous knuckles.
Yeah, my big knuckles.
Oh my god.
My fingers are bigger than my wrists.
They used Kawhi Leonard's hands as hand models for Steppenwolf.
So
look how small my winky is.
Maybe he was dual wielding some pistols or something, and they were like,
he's Superman akimbo.
Well, it's a black suit Superman in the comics. Had a gun, right? So
yeah,
it's true. And speaking of black suit Superman, we know that Zack had the suit altered so that he can then change the color of the suit later on,
because they wouldn't let him make an actual black and white suit. Yeah,
and we see it here in this image. I mean, you see how the suit is supposed to be represented, and it looks so much better compared to what we got.
Those accents under the surface, because you look at that and think, why in the world would you do that under surface blocking, and then you desaturate it and everyone goes, oh, okay,
it makes sense. Yeah.
I totally get that. Yeah,
with the saturation up, you could definitely see the metallic.
Those aren't his muscles.
Weird.
Yeah,
like when Zack pointed out the whole idea of like, that was because we were going to desaturate and recolor it blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been wondering for so long, like, why did you change it from BvS, or first off, why did you change from Man of Steel? Because Man of Steel suit is fantastic.
Steel suit's awesome.
But
I love it.
Even with that, why'd you change it from BvS suit to the Justice League suit and make it look so ridiculous? Like, why'd you do that? And then he just said that. I was like,
there it is. There it is.
I think the thing that we don't talk about enough too is if you showed someone Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Justice League, they would never assume it was made by the same person.
Yeah.
I mean, they're filmed completely different. The color palettes are totally different. The lenses being used are so vastly different. And for Man of Steel, if you think of like the first 45 minutes of it, it's such a different film before the action comes into it, that when we were talking, Steve and I are like, I actually don't have a clue what Justice League is going to look like. It's it's not Larry Fong. It's a different aspect ratio, which means it's going to be lit differently. Shots are going to be composed differently. I have no idea. The fact that it's the same director is incredibly cool, but that also means that if you bring someone in to finish it, they're going to look and say, well, I have no idea what this person was thinking for this. So I guess it looks like this. And then you get that shot of Superman with the heat vision where you realize, oh, he was actually trying for something that was even more different than Man of Steel or Batman v Superman, of almost like I don't even know. We're gonna have to come up with like a new vocabulary to talk about what a movie looks like when it's that, that perspective of where a character can step into frame and be seen from the top of their head to their feet, and it not be far away.
Yeah.
Like,
Which I
I
think
don't
is
know.
absolutely
Like
awesome
that
because
shot
like
of Diana in the trailer. Well, yeah.
because I love the fact that it's so tall because again you get to see the new, Steppenwolf and Darkseid when they walk into frame like you said you'll see all up and down, whereas in a regular widescreen you'd see of course their torso and their head and you wouldn't get to see as much, but there's so much more detail to absorb. And one of the movies I go back to when we were dealing with a similar aspect ratio is The Lighthouse with Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. And it's how they utilize the up and down, like the taller frame, and how it just gives it a really cool aesthetic. That's what I'm really excited about with a superhero movie like that.
Yeah.
No, I'm definitely looking forward to the fact that it's going to be in that 4:3 aspect ratio to get the taller image, to get the full frame on, basically everything he shot will be on the screen. I think that's a really cool idea. And, I really can't wait to look at it. And the history lesson shots in the trailer in 4:3 look so good. They do. I think they look amazing. And we are going to play the trailer in just a few minutes just so we can kind of go over that as well. But so, obviously we're leaving, Justice League in the past. We're going to move forward from that because, that movie sucks. And then we've all agreed that
I was expecting some profound statement, but it's like, no, it sucks.
Here we go. He's leading into something.
I had something with it, but then at the end of the day, I was like, you know what?
Never
It just sucks. It just sucks. In fact, I usually play this every time I say the word Justice League.
Why did you say that name?
Because it really should not be said at all anymore. It's just, I try and call it the theatrical cut.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't want.
like I always say, I mean, it needs to exist because people need to know what the stark difference is going to be. It's going to be night and day,
And it's so rare to like. There's no one-to-one. There's some other similar examples, but this is going to be the only example that we've ever had of two filmmakers using almost the exact same ingredients, same cast.
Superman,
obviously it's a different story, and
Superman 2,
yeah, but
you got
even
the
that
Donner
with-
cut. But I mean, that's
the Donner
kind of
cut
what
is
they
not-
wanted
yeah.
for Zack Snyder. They were like, just release it as is, and that
Yeah.
would have been the Donner cut. Pretty much, that would have been the Snyder cut. Then they were like, just release it like that.
Right. But even the amount of things that you can do with like the Donner cut versus like the visual, I don't know, like the toolbox was smaller for that, right? So you don't have the kind of stuff you're seeing visually that Zack is doing. And the kind of academic angle of you can literally see like, oh, Joss is given this footage and this story and these characters, and told to make something out of it in limited time, and then versus Zack having the same characters and the same footage and putting something together, and to be able to say like, oh, like even when you have especially when it's the same shots and say this is how this character is treated, this is how that character is treated, and it's because like even we're talking about color grading, is the Stefan Sonnenfeld colored both versions, so it's not, we're not even talking about artistic ability, it's literally the decision making and the person that says this is what I want it to look like, more of this, less of that. And that's the director. At the end of the day, it's the director that sits with the colorist and says, make it more pink, or make it more pink, or make it more gold.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that in the final act, well, in the theatrical cut's final act, which was like a Frankenstein's monster, they overly saturated the entire scene just to brighten it up. And it had this, like
they painted the sky weird
this
colors,
like pinkish red hue. You're just like, what's happening right now?
We can't lose.
Yeah, they're like, we did it.
Crazy,
printing money.
It doesn't only ruin the intent of those shots and the lighting and everything, but also like I was saying earlier with the costumes, the thing that Dyce and I were talking about with Aquaman's costume and how it's like he went with this alternate costume instead of the one from the Aquaman movie. But it's busy, but also it kind of lacks detail. However, there's a shot of him fighting Steppenwolf in the new trailer where you see like there's some light flashing, and it's obviously it's a way higher contrast, and you actually get reflection of the gold like lacing in his armor, and it accentuates his muscles and his physique, and it actually gives like I didn't realize how much gold there was in the costume because you have to use that harsh lighting and the reflections in order to achieve it. But when you flatten everything out and up the brightness level that much, you flat, like you remove all texture, and so something that
Well, it looks like a
was
fish, right?
designed-
Like it's a different undersea like scale type
Yeah.
reflective.
Yeah.
It's just a different concept of it. That if the person's standing there, it's like, is that like porcelain? Like that looks really super weird when you're wearing.
What is that, velvet?
Yeah, what is that?
I said more, not turquoise.
And also too, this comment as well that has been thrown around ever since the article came out from the New York Times about it being a cul-de-sac. I like what
Zack.
cul-de-sac, or I like what General Significance says here: a cul-de-sac where you make a U-turn from the current DCEU back into the Snyderverse.
Hell yeah, that's
Boom.
good. I love that.
Let me turn around.
Patent pending. Patent pending.
Patent pending. Steven, what's your take on this comment of the whole cul-de-sac?
I think my favorite take on that was actually Kevin Smith. When
Yeah, right.
they read the thing on his show, and his reaction was like the most pure reaction that I feel like a lot of people who aren't like part of this film Twitter DC Twitter bubble have, which was he read it, and I don't even think he finished the letter. I think he just read that first that part of the sentence, and he just stopped and he goes, "Why would you say that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would
As
any
a company, right?
executive, like, why would anybody, even if that was the plan, why would, before your product comes out, why would you ever say this is it, there's no more? Not only as a it's gonna hurt the product, but also what if it's the biggest thing you've ever done?
And also, like, we know
you're-
from
you're-
Zack Snyder that
Thanks, Mom.
this thing is going to have, it's going to have all the lead-offs leading into other things that it would have had it been released in 2017.
Exactly.
And so, like, them saying, oh, it's going to lead to nowhere, you're just like, well, why? It's like if you're a toy company.
It's impossible.
And you make this figure that's supposed to have, like, attachable pieces that make it much more fun to play with later on, and you say, yeah, we're not going to make those pieces in the future, so, like, we'll sell you this toy with unfinished pieces. So, like, you know, it is what it is.
But I mean, it leads to the Flash movie, which is going to be shot or start shooting in April. It leads to the Aquaman movie that already got shot, because they made reference to it. I mean, it doesn't end, even if.
Yeah, well, and what I said after the recent trailer, in light of the cul-de-sac comment, was that it really highlights how I think a lot of the reason that these changes happened is because it's Pandora's box, is what it is.
Definitely.
And if this movie had come out, like, if you want to do a course correction, you can't release this movie and then course correct.
No, you
Yeah.
can't. You
There's
can't.
too much out there. You have, and so that's the only thing that makes logical sense out of some of these changes, where it's like, why would they do that? And yes, they're all bad decisions, but it's like cutting off your arm to get it unstuck from the
Right.
rock.
Yeah.
Because I think that they saw it as, okay, if this movie, even if they had finished it and released it as Zack had made it, with Whedon, then you've got Darkseid, you've got Fourth World, you've got, Lanterns, you've got Martian Manhunter,
Right.
all this stuff, and then you're going to tell everybody, but we're not going to do that now.
Yeah. That's it.
But that's a story for later.
That's all.
There's nothing more to see here.
People didn't care if they saw more of or not, which is exactly what they did, so that they could then make other stuff without people saying, well, but what about Darkseid? What is happening with him next? And the problem is, it was already too late. The bell was rung in BvS, right? The bell's already been rung. And I think even though we hadn't seen it on screen, we knew what was coming, because Zack's a visualist. He foreshadowed it. He put it all in the story there. And we knew we wanted that story finished. We knew that it led to Darkseid. We knew that it led to Black Suit Superman. We knew that it led to Batman making up for his sins, and Wonder Woman coming back into the world, and Flash and Cyborg being inspired by Superman and joining him in the sun. Right? These are all because it's like it's the Campbellian, the monomyth. You look at it, and like, you watch Star Wars and you know what's going to happen, because it's myth. It's what always happens. It follows the same. But that's what's so great about it, is the language that you can follow and track and predict. And it's like starting. It's like a South Park with Come Sail Away. It's like they played the first few bars of Come Sail Away, and then like, no, Cartman, no more. You're not going to finish the song.
Yeah, I think that I was talking to someone who really loves the Fourth World and really loves Jack Kirby and all of that, and they were saying, I don't care about any of the Snyder Cut stuff. I just want that New Gods to come along. And I sat there and thought, I hate to say this, but I would bet money that the only way you actually get a New Gods movie is if Zack Snyder gets people interested in that through this.
Yeah,
Because
sure, I agree.
Really interested in making that, and all of his collaborations so far have been like he would say, Ava DuVernay and Tom King, like, yeah, go nuts. Like,
I mean, because those characters are a big selling point for Zack Snyder's Justice League, and if people don't come in droves to see it, like the studio is going to think like, oh, they're not interested in seeing Darkseid or Steppenwolf or Granny Goodness, or Desaad. They're not interested in seeing those characters. It's like, yes, you want Zack Snyder's Justice League to be successful. If you want to continue to have these blockbuster DC films, like it's something you should naturally want as a DC.
No. They need to go with Plastic Man. And I mean, you're printing money again. You're printing money.
We're printing
Come
money.
on now.
Gold, Blue
It's funny
Beetle.
because
Booster Gold.
I would very much enjoy seeing all of those, but I don't know why it needs to be mutually exclusive. Like the idea of a Plastic Man, especially if you're talking about like with
Ben Schwartz.
Ben Schwartz, yeah, Plastic Man with Ben Schwartz sounds like
May the Schwartz be with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why that has to happen like at the cost of this.
I mean, this is such a masterpiece, and the fact that we're getting Zack Snyder's Justice League on March 18th on HBO Max it's going to be incredible.
2021.
In 2021. I mean, honestly, I think for most of us, when we found out, especially even when we saw the trailer, a lot of us reacted this way.
Oh my god! Wow! Oh my god!
Speak for yourself.
The big
I was screaming. I wasn't saying like, "Oh my gosh!"
That's how you sound.
Yeah, no, I mean,
That's
you
how you
for the
sound,
replay.
Austin, when
That
you get
was
excited.
exactly
No,
the way
Oh my!
when we watched the new trailer.
Hell no!
And we saw the big bat tank, the War Machine. He was like, "Oh my god!
Oh my god!
Oh my gosh! You tried to time that. You tried to time that, but you failed.
Yeah, I know.
You failed.
Dodson! Dodson! We've got Dodson here! See, nobody cares.
It's been so long since I saw that
I
clip.
love that video.
It's so old with my old hat. I mean, goodness gracious.
I know, it really is. So
I'll have to update.
real quick,
Good luck.
because I wanted to ask you, and look, and this movie has kind of run its course for the most part, but Wonder Woman 84. I mean, it was a little bit of here and there. I liked the movie, but there was some parts I felt that could have been improved on. Namely these scenes right here, like this one here.
Never thought.
It Austin changed the music for that scene because it really doesn't matter at that point.
Awesome.
And then of course there is the famous mannequin arm.
It's like that clip Conan plays for Paul Rudd.
I need to see y'all do Wonder Woman by the second on that.
Next 12 years of your life is planned out for you, so have at it.
Minutes 15 and 16. Diana walks, or the robbers enter the mall.
Yeah, still a short skirt. Yeah.
Yeah, he fumbles the gun.
So,
And then he screams,
thoughts-
"No!"
What are your thoughts on Wonder Woman 84?
I'll
Andrew, go
start.
first. Yeah.
I'll start by saying
Steve's getting ready to sign off right now. He's like, I'm out of here.
there,
I'm actually under NDA.
I mean, I think that the first Wonder Woman movie had the feeling of a movie that ended up that was like lightning struck. That the setting fit, the casting was, the chemistry was perfect, and like the choices that were made were really, really strong. I think because Patty Jenkins had like 15 years to think about that and get all of that down.
Yeah.
Like there are moments in the first Wonder Woman movie that I think are among the best that like a superhero movie is going to have because they're untouchable. But 1984 made me realize that a good producer is a really rare thing, in that a producer can look at what a director is doing and say, I appreciate your vision. I understand your vision. I think that some of these things can be changed to make sure that vision is coming across the strongest way it can. And that is Warner Brothers. Like, Chuck Roven is a really good producer. That's just not the kind of producer that he's really well known for being. And they had looked to Jeff Johns to be that, but that just isn't the case. And at Marvel, they have Kevin Feige leads like a whole team of them that are doing really good at that. Wonder Woman 84 was like, when you end up with a movie that I think you can take 15 to 20 minutes out of and it is better, that is an issue of, ironically, I guess a director was just allowed to do whatever they wanted. Coming from Warner Brothers and the EU. I don't know how that happens. But that's also true of like I would say that about like Django Unchained. Like, I love that movie, but there are 15 minutes you could take out and that movie goes from like really, really good to great. So that's not like slagging on 84, but I think it ended up feeling like an 80s movie in a way that the first Wonder Woman movie set up people to expect something different. And I think that's where Patty Jenkins and the fans are looking at each other. And there was just a little bit of a disconnect in what she was trying to do. So on that front, if the messaging was the issue of like what this movie is going to be, then that fits 100% with pretty much everything Warner Brothers has been doing with this completely.
Yeah, I feel like people were expecting a movie that felt like it was set in the 80s, and she made a movie that felt like it was made in the 80s, which I think I think there's artistic merit to that. But also at the same time, I think that it wasn't. It reminds me of like the first few episodes of WandaVision, where my kind of perspective on that is, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but do all or nothing. If you're not going to commit to this is the 80s bit, then embrace the modern aesthetic and the modern production value, because what you ended up with was, oh, hey, look, we're clearly capable of doing high-end CGI and stunt choreography and writing lines and having chemistry that resonates for a 2021 audience, but we're going to use a mannequin for this scene instead because 80s. and it's I understand why, but like I said, if you're going to do that, then make it that way all the way through. Because then people are saying like, wait, why is this good and that's bad? It feels like an accident instead of feeling intentional, because you know that they made a choice to make it that way only sometimes and not every time.
Why settle for this when you can have this?
Life is good.
It can be better.
But it can be better. And, you know, going back to that scene with the mannequin arms, this one here, I actually took it upon myself to reenact the scene as best as I could, and here it is right here. And that's with a live child.
I know. Actually,
Andre Alvaro,
the child did get hurt. His bones, a couple of his ribs were crushed by the
and his father does not care.
My son is perfectly fine right now. I'll tell you that.
After the trauma.
Answer this.
With his son,
You keep telling yourself that.
Answer this. Who filmed that, Andre?
My wife did.
She let you do that to her
What do
kid?
you think I did? Put it on a tripod? I framed it and everything. Like, oh
It
yeah,
sounds
okay.
like I'm sore right here. He's like, production
I
value.
can just imagine. Like, hey, honey, can you film this for me? Like, what are you gonna do to my kid?
I shot it in a 4:3 aspect ratio.
Oh man, you can hear him. You can hear it cracking.
You can hear the bones crunch. But it's okay for her to do it right here. She's like,
she's a wonder woman.
It's
getting worse. You're like, they're mannequins. They're not real.
But no, I show you guys the sentiment with Wonder Woman 84. There was parts that like just didn't quite fit. Some things felt like an accident. I think the biggest positive for me, and I've said this a couple times. Yeah, Lester. Some of the biggest positives for me was the performances themselves of Kristen Wiig, Gal Gadot, and Pedro Pascal, as well as Chris Pine. But, yeah, Pedro. You gotta say it right or not at all. You know, but. And that was the thing, like, Kristen Wiig really shocked me with Wonder Woman 84. I was fully expecting to hate her character, but she was my favorite of the whole entire movie. I just wish that
with what she had.
I just wish that the story and the flow of the film would have matched the quality of the performances.
Yeah. Well, because like I think, like we were saying with it, if it was an 80s movie, I think, speaking of how great Kristen Wiig was, when she beats up that dude in the street, that was cold. that was like an amazing character moment, but it was an amazing character moment that you'd expect to see in 2021.
Yeah.
If that was an 80s movie, I mean, she would have like dropped him in a trash can and like, pigeons would have pooped on him. Like it would have been something like that. And
Yeah.
that would have been the equivalent. Like,
That's
you
really
could
good
have still
point.
played the Greatest American Hero music to the fight,
Yeah.
her beating him up.
Like they had moments.
just,
They had moments like that fight scene that feels like it fits in the modern DCU, and then they had
Yeah.
moments
And then
like
she
the mall
walks
scene
away
that
and
feels
she
like it was
fights
filmed on the set of Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Picture heels. Yeah. Freezes,
I think for the flow in that, the biggest criticism I have is, and that's why it sucks, is it goes back to that producer thing where
That's
a
why it
producer
sucks.
would say like,
or what?
the
So you mean
audience
what
is gonna
sucks about it, or why the movie sucks?
no, it sucks that the problem is, I get it. You don't I'm with you. Like, just move on to the next thing. Like, and that's the kind of thing where a producer will say, like, I think the audience will. You already have them. Like, you don't just move on to the next act or move on to the next thing. And that goes down to Steven. We were talking about the third act with the whole, beam thing with Pedro Pascal. Is that was a case of like, I get it, Pedro. Excuse me. It was a case of like,
It's fine.
yeah, I
Dawson
get
will
it.
correct you if you're wrong. So.
I
get it,
didn't
yeah.
though. I didn't.
Pedro Pascal.
Right, well, and what you end up with as a result of that is the climax of the movie, which actually I really liked the resonance, not just with the theme song, but we were talking a lot about the idea of the beautiful lie earlier. I think thematically what she says and does there really, if you take a look at the BvS or the DCEU Trinity and Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, what she adds to the story of the beautiful lie in that moment, I think is gorgeous. But you get it with her delivered sitting against a wall,
Oh yeah,
like kind of muttering it under her
talking.
breath, and
Yeah,
and which is awkward in the first place, just in terms of scene blocking. Like, it's great on paper, but in the scene, it's not really that exciting. And maybe it would have been better, but but it comes at the tail end of like 5 minutes of him just being like, "You can have it all.
Yeah.
You can have it." Like,
So
I
I
already
definitely
drawn out.
understand that by
Like
now.
his throat had to be so sore after like what it had been like an hour of him just like, wish for it, you can have it.
Yeah.
And keep that enthusiasm. He needed a hot dog at some point during that rant.
They had the fans blowing on them. You know what I mean?
I think like in isolation, I
Are we
actually
good?
love all
No,
that
keep
stuff.
going. Keep going.
I love Pedro Pascal just like chewing that scenery and like
yeah.
and it's all great and it works for the character, but I think it's one of those moments where you like literally that's an 80s villain moment spliced up against a modern solution. The 80s solution to that would have been like, I don't know, she would have punched him or something and then it would have been over, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't think it meshed that well.
The moment of the movie that really lost me was when Maxwell Lord learned about the satellite that can touch everyone in the entire world. And I was
you.
like,
What?
are they really going to use that as a loophole for the rule? And then they did, and I was like, gosh dang it! Like,
Wait, when you say touching, I expected them to say, "Oh no, it's not literally touching." Like, that's what I thought the president was going to say when he's like, "Wait, you said particles touching," and he's like, "Yeah, they're actually particles touching," and he's like, "This might work," and I thought.
You mean there's atoms?
But the problem is that like it's the signal that's touching them. It's not Maxwell Lord that's touching them. It's like it's the signal. Like, how does this make any sense?
And then he stands.
Well, once again,
in that circle with the light or the signal is going through, and he can speak to everybody else. Like,
It's a boom tube.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know you
Yeah,
could do that. DirecTV this whole time has been doing that
I
to
mean,
me.
the only other thing that sucked about it was there was like no repercussion for. I mean, no arrest.
Yes,
He didn't
yes.
get arrested. He found
Yeah.
Alistair, and everything's cool. Like you caused all this destruction, and Wonder Woman's like, yeah, no, you can go free.
You got Alistair coming out of the forest after he lands in Marine One. He gets out. He comes out of the trees like, Dad. I was like, well, what are you doing in there? Like,
I was like, why was a homeless guy back there?
Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman can summarize the problems with the movie, or the amount of problems in the movie, with her last line in the movie, saying, "So many things, so many things,
so many
around this."
things.
Yeah.
So many things. I mean, yeah, it just. I mean, I liked the movie, but there was a lot of things that I didn't like about it. But
Story issues mostly.
Yeah, exactly. But the repercussion at the end is that he didn't face was what I really didn't like about it, was that he literally almost destroyed the world in a sense, and everyone's just like, sorry, ain't no harm, no foul.
And Cheetah's no longer
clean
Cheetah
this whole
anymore.
world up. We're gonna clean up your mess.
Yeah, I didn't know what he was trying to say. I think it is the real big thing is when it got about 2/3 of the way through, and I was thinking, I don't really know how like Cheetah's powers are working right now. I don't know what. I don't really know.
It's just happening. It's just happening in front of us.
They set up the rule and then they broke it. Like Wonder Woman didn't even pronounce her wish. You know, she didn't even say it.
You can't even think it.
Yeah, you can think it apparently.
Good God.
And I feel like there was some, and I never know if this is a issue with them not having the point refined or if there were like competing voices in the script. But I thought it was a really cool concept that they set up, that truth is the opposite of greed, and that like greed is like resolved with truth. But I think that the definition of what is greed and the definition of what is truth was not consistent throughout the movie, and as a result you get some like loose kind of stuff that's happening, and then when they go to bring it home at the end, you're like, oh, I see what you're doing there, but that's not consistent. Like sometimes greed is like purely a capitalistic thing, and it feels like a criticism against capitalism, but then other times greed is just like, oh no, you're just like self-centered. And then
greed is like your car keys.
Yeah, exactly. And so because of that lack of like, I don't know what they think truth is, and I don't know what they think greed is, therefore the concept of truth defeating greed is cool, but it doesn't feel thematically resonant with the rest of the way they handle those topics.
Right. I think the first movie, I think the reason why the first movie killed the landing is because when she actually killed the dude and then she looked up into the sky and they did the sound of just the machinery slowly coming in, of like nothing stopped. It feels like everyone in the theater was like, I know exactly what you're saying. Like I was with you for that big, here's the climax you expect, where she kills the bad thing and everything is fine. And then, oh wait, it didn't just stop. And that was like, you were almost a step ahead of her realizing it. So then when they go with the silly, the big battle and everything, you're like, I get what you were trying to say here. With 84, I loved the Chris Pine stuff and the invisible jet. That could have been, from an amazing Wonder Woman 84 movie that was like perfectly marrying all of this stuff. But it got 2/3 of the way with, I think, Pedro, his character,
Dawson,
was such a big part of the story.
He's like, that's correct.
That I was being pulled in a lot of different directions. I was like, is he the lead? Like, I don't actually know how I should feel about him or Steve or Cheetah or Diana. So yeah, there was a lot going on.
Also with him, speaking of it being like too long, is the criticized aspect of him taking over somebody's life and body. I feel like that's one of those examples of, regardless of whether or not that was like morally problematic, that's one of those 80s movies things. The question of like, do we even need that explained? Like they didn't do anything with it. It's like, why you like over-explained this thing, and that just gave people like, well, wait, but so where did that guy go then? Did he just take over his body? Did he miss appointments?
Yeah.
Like, does he have any? Were people worried about him?
They could have made
Was he
it
on a
easy.
medication?
Well, they could have made it easy on themselves in that one little instance at the end of Wonder Woman 1917 when Chris Pine, when it blew up or whatever, it could have just taken him out of that moment and then plopped him right there, and that would have like solved everything.
Or just don't explain it at all. It's magic.
It's
I
magic.
had that thought. I was on the set visit for that one, and they said, the question was, how the heck is Steve Trevor back? And they said, well, the story is getting what you want versus the truth of things. And I think you can understand what happens. And I thought, oh, okay, so she'll wish him back. And then at the end, she'll realize, I need to say goodbye because this isn't true. Like this is dishonoring my memory of him, if anything.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have even needed.
Well, yeah. I mean, the quantum leap thing wasn't even necessary.
No.
Yeah, I just thought he should have just existed, like bam. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
Ryan had a good point a while back when we were talking about this.
What?
Yeah, I know.
I rattle them out like
Sometimes he does, and sometimes he had bad takes.
90%.
I just had to play it. I just had to play that one. Okay, so
2017.
but what he was saying was that when she asked him, "What's the last thing you remember?" That I agree that it would have been cool if he would have said flying, and then it would have showed the scene of him in the plane. All of a sudden, like a light opens up, and then it sucks him through, and then it would have been like, "Oh, so you literally pulled him from the previous movie and saved him from dying," but now having to,
Inhabit another guy's body.
her wish, to give up her wish, she has to essentially kill
put him back in that place,
and she has to kill
die.
him.
Yeah.
Otherwise, and that's the ultimate sacrifice. That I literally have to kill him in order to save the world.
Yeah.
And he's telling me to do it. Like, you have to do this.
And then she'd snap his neck. That would be.
Oh shit! What did I do? You okay? I was just trying to give you a neck rub.
Not my Wonder Woman.
Alistair!
And now I'm gonna go get my sword and shield.
Yeah. Let me go get my armor that I have in my back of my apartment, wrapped in some
For some reason,
burlap.
I have this this eagle armor that I really don't use it for anything, and it doesn't really serve any purpose other than flying to this one place. You belong in a museum.
Kalel, no.
I do not belong in a
Was,
museum.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Okay.
know. We're very aware what you're
I know.
wearing.
I'm-
We
yeah.
watch movies here, in case you weren't aware.
Yeah, that's what we do here. So Wonder Woman 84, look, it has goods and bads, a lot of bads, but it has some good things about it as well, and it will go down in memory as it was what it was. So moving on from that now, as we kind of wrap things up here, Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League is coming out, and I believe it's only 28 days now.
30.
Is it 30?
Is it
Yeah,
30 days?
don't jump the gun.
Today is 2/18. It comes out 3/18.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Okay,
this
so
month's at
30
28
days.
days.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's still 28 days?
It's 28 days. I was right.
Okay, cool.
28
Okay,
days
whatever.
later.
28. So 28 seconds later, we're still talking about this. And let me ask you guys, what are you most excited to see? I mean, there's a lot of things that we're going to see. So, Andrew, let's start with you. What are you most excited to see, or if not learn about, in this movie that you didn't know even existed?
Ben
Aspect of the
Affleck.
story.
I am
Ben
most excited
Affleck.
to see more of Ben Affleck's Batman. Yeah, that was such a what an inspired choice to have him bring what he did to that character in Batman v Superman. And
So
then
good.
at the end of it, like his last words basically were, "I failed him in life, I won't fail him in death." And I never really got that payoff, so
Yeah.
Something was bleeding.
Something is definitely bleeding.
definitely, yeah. That I want to see the Batman that he was convinced to play the character for.
What he signed up for, yes.
Yeah, I want to see this Batman.
Yeah.
Well, here I am.
Like, that's the Batman I want to see.
He should have ended with bitch.
There I am. Oh, Bruce, hey,
Like,
Really
you
make
told
them
me that.
earn that R rating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm really mad at you, Steven, what about you?
I think I don't know. There's a bunch of different stuff, but I think after that last trailer, it's Chris Terrio. So many of the things that we talk about with Batman v Superman, we talk about it as like themes and ideas, but ultimately, what really makes them something that like sticks with us and that we want to talk about is the dialogue and the way that it's written. And it gets glossed over a little bit, I think, because not that people underappreciate Terrio. I think fans praise him plenty, but it's not. We're way more likely to talk about sort of the thematic implications than just the nature of the writing itself. And in that trailer, a number of things, but particularly the that if you can't take down the charging bull, don't wave the red cape.
Yeah.
And then of course being delivered by Jeremy Irons. And I mentioned this earlier, just reminded me of just what kind of movie this is. And also reassured me that like, oh no, the things, because there's a lot of mystique around like what all changed and when, and did they shoot different dialogue on set, and how much of that Terrio dialogue was lost, and but we know that there are new lines of the same kind that we repeat from BvS all the time that have yet to be discovered, and that's like so exciting to know that there are going to be things said in this movie that we're going to talk about for a long time, and that's, you know, as someone that's going to do a podcast doing that, it's very exciting to know.
And are you still going to finish BvS by the minute, or are you just going to move on?
Yeah, we're gonna do it.
Like, can we do it 5 minutes? Can we do 5-minute increments?
Yeah, we're trying to get through this. So in this 30-minute segment,
That doesn't have quite the same ring to it, though. You know, beat this by the 5 minute.
Actually, are y'all going to change anything because of the IMAX cut?
You start over again.
I think, yeah, right.
Because Lex's office is going to be a lot bigger now. He's like, damn, we didn't see all that.
Yeah.
We got to start over.
The aspect ratio has changed.
Yeah. My understanding.
Steven will lead with that. Let's talk about the aspect ratio. So aspect ratio.
My understanding is that the content itself isn't going to be changing drastically. And so, or won't change at all. It'll just be like the aspect ratio and the color. So, just like with like the nightmare scenes, obviously there's even a couple different, there's not actually a IMAX version with the IMAX scene or with the nightmare scenes released now. It's all the same aspect ratio. And so, if it does, it'll just be something that we talk about in terms of, here's the stuff you can see on the edge of the frame that you couldn't see before, but I don't think it'll drastically adjust like thematically what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and we talk about aspect ratio when it comes to BvS. I mean, you're getting a lot more of the picture, and we can see that right here in this image where you kind of see the difference in the standard and then the other IMAX and then the 143x1. I mean, you get a lot more image on the screen. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're losing anything; you're actually gaining quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's one of those shots. One of my favorite shots from the Nightmare we talk about is how it's the first shot when he takes down the binoculars and his eyes are like, you can't even see the whites of his eyes. And we talk about how like thematically with Batman, there's this play between the costume and Bruce, and he has like a staring contest with the costume. And so the fact that they depict him in the Nightmare, where the first time you see him, his mouth is covered and his eyes are just complete black. And so the idea is like Bruce Wayne is gone and he's just 100% Batman. So anyway, with the new aspect ratio, I think Zack released that scene. I actually had that scene as the background on my phone for a long time because I liked it, and it was funny. I didn't realize it until we got the new scene, but it was cropped way down lower, and once you raise once you increase the size of the top of the screen, you get way more of his like full face in there. And I was able to swap my phone wallpaper out and actually have his whole head in there instead of having like the ears cut off and it cropped down. You can actually see what it is now.
Right. And It's David actually has a pretty good point saying won't only be the IMAX scenes of the different aspect ratio of the entire movie, because IMAX cameras are very loud. Yeah. Very loud. So you can't do like quiet dialogue scenes in regards to that. So I mean that's a good point of like the big like action scenes will be in IMAX and then like more quieter.
I've heard he may have shot most of it in anamorphic, which would mean that there's not any additional visual detail to add, and that the scenes that are like, for example, the Wayne murder was supposed to be in IMAX, but it was shot. There was an issue with the IMAX camera because it was super, super cold and the camera was jamming or something. So they just shot it full frame on film, and
like
then
they would normally cut. Yeah,
exactly. Which is what they did with Justice League, but then it ended up getting, I think, cropped in the actual theatrical. And so they'll be expanding that one, and I'm hoping that there's more scenes where they did something similar. But with anamorphic, there's just not anything to add, unfortunately. Because I wish that they would do it for more of the movie, but I don't think they can do it for a ton.
Yeah, no, I could agree with that.
Well, I can't wait to see it. I want to see it in IMAX.
Me too.
The aspect ratio is what I'm looking forward to. Steve,
I can't wait.
Let's talk about aspect.
I can't wait for them to release
Andrew's
that.
like, do you mind if I mute myself?
Like a physical copy of the IMAX version of Batman v Superman, like the steelbook for that. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to get the IMAX screen in my house. That's what I'm.
Oh yeah, it's on the way right now.
Yeah, it's like
So real quick, you guys. I mean, so we finally got to see the official trailer for Zack Snyder's Justice League. Obviously, we got the teasers that were leading up to it, and then we got the official trailer dropped. It was quite an amazing trailer. There were a lot of things that I did not know even were in this movie. I mean, obviously from the teaser, you know, the image of the tank was something that none of us, I mean, I shouldn't speak for all of us. I didn't know about that. And I was like, holy cow, what?
I wasn't surprised.
What is
at all.
that?
I was like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, of course.
No, I'm so stoked to see that because again, as an avid fan of the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel, like seeing how accurately they depicted that in that still or in that shot of it, I'm just like, dude, yes, give it to me as much as you can in this movie. Like, let me see Ben Affleck driving that thing. Let me see him like performing an autopsy on Doomsday inside the tank or something. Like, give me all you can of that thing.
And to me, that's a really good prediction in the sense that when does that scene take place? I mean, because we were talking about just the other day, Dawson and I, and yeah, it could take place after the battle in BvS, where maybe he goes there in the tank to recover Doomsday's body. So I mean,
and that's where he finds the cocoons.
That's what I think. Because if you look at, I think you can't see it as well on like the YouTube one because like YouTube compression is so bad. But if you find an uncompressed version of the scene, you can actually see in the background there's like construction vehicles and stuff, and like floodlights.
And controversial explanation for what this actually is.
Here we go. Let's do it.
Well, so, if you compare to the like the first shot of Superman dying and then it pans out over the destruction, I think it's Stryker's Island.
Yeah,
and he's and which makes me think that. I know Zach said it's called the War Machine, so I don't mean to be like, oh, it's boring, but I actually think it's like a bat dozer more than a bat tank. I think he's using it for excavation or like, you know, getting Doomsday's body. If he's looking to resurrect Superman, I mean, Doomsday's the place that you're going to start, right?
Yeah, figure out how exactly those bodies tick or how Kryptonians work on a cellular level.
Yeah. And Superman had the Codex, so could you do the same process for Doomsday? But it's not going to destroy his DNA, like And so, how does Batman know that or find that? Who knows? But I think there's a couple of plot points there that would tie together with the finding the Parademon nest, getting
that also
resolving the Doomsday part.
Like it would be part of a montage. Like it's so picturesque. It's like, well, that's going to be the shot is him just standing on the tank with his cape waving. And if it's
same thing with Superman dying. It almost visually reminds me of like the Watchmen opening credits, where it's this parallax effect, where it doesn't, the motion isn't natural. It is slow motion, obviously, but it's also like he's moving too fast for how fast like the background is moving. And you're like, okay, this is like a surreal thing here. And so I wonder if they're going to get like a Watchmen-esque moment of showing these a moment in time like that.
That would be awesome. And that's how it opened up.
Everybody knows.
Like, what would be awesome is what would be awesome if that song was not in there. But what would be really cool is if we've been told that we were going to get the end of BvS through Lois Lane's perspective, and then like you said, have that montage, like the things that happen shortly after, like again picking up the body and like Batman trying to figure out what the heck to do, and then really get into more of the meat of the story. Because again, you have a lot of time with 4 hours to expand on things, give you some more context, and to add on to the end of BvS a little bit. So, that could be interesting.
Exactly. Where was Aquaman? Where was Cyborg? Where was Lennox?
Yeah. Well, I kind of feel like
I'll tell you where they were. They were at home washing their tights.
I'm kind of I don't know if I want to say concerned, but like all we've seen of Iris and Kiersey is those one scenes, and those have a very similar effect. Where I kind of wonder if is all of this is Flash's backstory and Kiersey Clemens is the scenes that we've seen of her, at least, is that all in a montage of sorts, and then
because it doesn't seem like it plays out, with dialogue and it
is a flashback of sorts. So yeah, I mean, it could be a montage. That's I never thought about that. So that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that could be in that whole, like we're saying, this whole opening montage.
And now that we're talking about it, Leonard Cohen's everybody knows would fit very well there.
Yeah.
Mm.
Leonard Cohen's version. Exactly.
Yes.
Not the version, yeah, in the movie, yeah.
The one in the movie is so bad. And then, not to
And
mention,
what bugs me so much about that part with the song, I hate to interrupt.
Go ahead.
But when they try to pull a Zack to try to
Yes,
come into a Zack's movie, and they kick the basket of fruit and make it slow motion. Like, of all things you made slow motion, you made kicking a basket of fruit,
colorful fruit,
by some disgruntled guy who's obviously some kind of criminal. Like, that's the most pathetic attempt to try to replicate that
and
ever.
it's obviously on a set. You know, it's like well lit. Everything's clean.
It's
It was
horrible.
just like,
And the lady owning the store is just like, oh no.
It's because he's gone, right?
oh yeah,
Superman, the one from Krypton.
yeah, the guy with the red cape. He died in the last movie. Remember? You guys don't know that because no one likes BvS, right? No, it's kind of like, no, dude, get out of here. Get out of here with that. It's such crap. So real quick, you guys, let's take one quick look at the trailer. I'm gonna play the trailer, Dawson. We should be okay.
We should be fine.
I played it on my show, and then I don't get anything.
Well, it's okay. Never mind. Go ahead.
hard.
Roll
Okay.
it.
Yeah, not because of the time of day, but I'm just saying. Okay, opening sound. Okay, you know what? Let me introduce it properly. Okay, guys, here is the official trailer to Zack Snyder's Justice League, the trailer that we've been talking about, and we've been waiting for so long.
This is
here
the
it is.
proper introduction.
This is the proper introduction right here.
Yeah, it's been out for a week, so.
Okay, here we go.
The bell's been rung. Out in the dark, among the stars, the god is dead.
I had a dream. Almost like a premonition. I think there's an attack coming.
My lord, this world will fall.
I need warriors. I'm building an alliance to defend ourselves.
How do you know your team's strong enough? If you can't bring down the charging bull, then don't wave the red cape at it.
We were sent here for a reason. And even if it takes you the rest of your life, find out what that reason is.
They said the age of heroes would never come again.
It will. It has to. We live in a society where honor is a distant memory. Isn't that right, Batman?
God.
Fire, bro.
Fan freaking tastic.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I love when he says Batman.
And then this scene here is the scene I wanted to ask you guys about. Just sound off. So as this goes falling into the ocean,
I can still hear this.
I haven't paused.
Sorry, that's my sister and my wife watching another movie. So I'm gonna mute myself real quick.
Okay. And they're blasting that
I was
movie.
like, how the hell did this? I know they're like, oh, they got the surround sound on.
Yeah, they're watching The Four Nerds right now in 4K.
Well, they're watching it in the 4:3 aspect ratio.
I was gonna say. Now, Steven, if they're watching the show in 4:3, what advantages would they have over? No, I'm kidding. Okay, so but this scene right here, with the stronghold falling into the ocean, I mean, I don't know how we never saw this scene before in the theatrical cut. 'Cause, I mean, this looks incredible.
It's too dark. It's too much death.
Yeah,
I would imagine that this is a failsafe that they did this to drop us into the ocean with Steppenwolf still inside of there. thinking that like, hey, that'll at least slow him down or hopefully kill him. And they're having to sacrifice a whole bunch of Amazon's lives that are still in there fighting. That's my take on it, at least. Go ahead. Please.
Can I explain, Steven? Can I explain the brilliant interpretation that you
I blow him up
here?
We're mining our own breakdown.
Our own breakdown here. That's why.
Here we go. Wait, real quick, have you guys done the trailer by the minute?
Yeah, it just needs to be edited because I think it came in around 2 hours.
No,
2 hours.
Yeah, we did like a 2-hour breakdown.
Damn,
that's not a joke either. Yeah.
No, I believe it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I had noticed the Amazons on horseback on the right, all standing, staring at this thing.
Yes.
So I had my suspicions, but then Steven noted that none of the Amazons die. Like they're all immortal, so they don't have cemetery. They don't have anything like that. They wouldn't have any funeral rites that they do. And considering how many of them have been killed by Steppenwolf when he attacks, that this, with them not running, would make more sense as what they have done with their dead. Now that
you see Hippolyta is like looking out at the ocean. It's like a burial at sea.
It is a burial at sea. You're right. That is
fire.
So good. And that was your idea?
Justice League by the minute for more insightful analysis.
There it is. If I had a beer, I'd drink it right now.
That's why we cut out, by the way. That's also why it would have been removed. Because it was
too dark.
Grim.
Like, people can't die in this movie. This is Justice League. It's like, man.
Well, because like the Amazon, they don't have any
fine.
graveyards, right? They have no mausoleums or.
That's
they would
true. And Steven, that was your idea?
Yeah.
That's pretty fun.
Bravo. That was really good. That was really good. Just for that, I'm going to give you the. I don't have the fire one on this one. How do I not have that?
You don't have that?
No, well, I don't have it. You know what?
You're so prepared.
It's on my other one. That's why
I
know.
Prepared you.
I have this one. I have that one. I can play it all day long.
Yeah. From years ago.
But I think that is a really I think that's on the money right there.
Incredible.
Because that was
incredible.
The question that I couldn't answer was, it doesn't happen during the battle because they're all standing around.
Yeah.
And so therefore, it falling is not a consequence of Steppenwolf, because otherwise that would probably happen during the battle.
Yeah.
So why would they shove it off just like for no reason?
And I would.
Well, another thing that could be happening.
Get this thing
Another
out of
thing
here.
that could be happening here is that, like, of course, this is where they initially attack, right? Steppenwolf and possibly parademons. We didn't see a bunch of parademons in the trailer, but I'm assuming at least at some point there's some parademons that attack. And of course, we know that a lot of the Amazons had ridden off with the mother box, and Steppenwolf followed and killed a couple of them. We've seen videos of this. Possibly what happened is they came back, and the attack from the parademons had like weakened the cliffside to where it fell down, and there's nothing they could really do about it. That's also another possibility, but I do like the whole burial at sea too.
Yeah, I think that's that's just fire, man. That's
that,
like,
yeah, and if you want to get a transition, because at some point we're going to have to leave them permanently, then it would make sense for us to get that shot of Hippolyta looking out over the water and then take up that bow and arrow and fire it to signal Diana, because their part of the story is done.
Right.
And not do it later on that night.
We'd follow that arrow.
Because like they do it in the theatrical cut, but they do it at night. So it's like, oh, okay, so they waited until nighttime to go do it. Like, all right, let's go have dinner, and then we'll shoot off the arrow. Let everybody know.
There are certain rites we must read off before we shoot the arrow towards Athens. And
let's all go take a
take
nap,
6 hours.
We'll do the arrow. Okay, good idea.
She stood there for 6 hours just winding up. Like, it's a really, really sensitive bow. Gotta make sure you don't snap the string.
Well, I mean, you have to have impeccable aim as well to hit green.
Aiming for 6 hours, like my arms are getting really tired.
That's one of those things where the way it's presented in the theatrical cut doesn't make any sense, but also I can see how that type of thing would happen in a Snyder movie. But I think not that it's going to have like exposition explaining how and why, but I feel like it's the type of thing that would have an explanation of some kind, other than just like, oh yeah, as we all know, all arrows traverse the ocean with minimal effort. Like,
that fire would never get blown up by the wind. But still, I mean, and as it goes on, I mean, Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It's a burial at sea, and that's where we leave them. And of course, the nightmare sequence. I mean, this scene right there is very reminds me. It's very Dune-esque. It just Blade Runner.
And
it's so awesome.
I don't know
The
which
color
of this
grading.
he shot on the in the additional photography, but I think a lot of it he's using the same lens that he used for Army of the Dead, which is like a f.95, just the thinnest focus, the thinnest field of
Yeah, if you go back to the shot, that first shot of Ben Affleck, it looks like everything closer than his face and just behind him is completely out of focus.
Yeah.
That is the lens he's using for a lot of Army of the Dead. And also, I guess this would have been like cinematography and film
Thank you.
by Zack. Depth of field.
My brain just like turned off in the middle of that sentence.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute you a little bit, nerdy, because you're like shooting this in the theater. I can hear the movie still.
You still hear the movie?
Not anymore. It stopped for a while. I was like,
I told him to turn it down. My gosh. I was wondering why you muted me. I was like, dude, what did I do?
They're like, yeah, okay.
I'm like, I don't want to hear what he has to say.
We're not really gonna turn it down.
And then obviously here she sees the mural that we've seen so many images of. And I'm assuming that this is probably where we get the history lesson, either here or at the beginning of the movie. But it sounds like it would be more here, because if we had it in the beginning, then you're kind of packing it all in with that and the opening scene going back to BvS, and then if there is an opening montage, and that's a long opening to get finally get to the story. But we'll see what
the
plays out.
Storyboard of the I don't know what the numbers are, but someone looks up, you can see there's a storyboard of the Viking burying the mother box, and there's also a storyboard of the Diana going to the Wayne Aerospace hangar to meet Bruce for the first time, and the first time in the movie, and though it's either like the next scene or close to it. So what makes sense is history lesson here. You wrap it up with that, and then she goes to Bruce to tell him the story. That's how the storyboards are.
More exposition, more history lesson.
Yeah.
What I think would be a really cool shot is if like she's looking at the mural, and all of a sudden, like the images on the wall
start like moving.
They start morphing into
like
what actually
in
happened.
the Prince of Egypt.
I guess kind of, but
like she's on like hallucinogenics, like acid.
No. So listen. So like, see the horses right in front of her on the wall. Like all of a sudden, you see the shot of the horses, and all of a sudden,
there's a horse.
It transitions to like actual horses being ridden by warriors, like riding into battle or something like that. Not like an acid trip, like an actual transformation into like the mural, from the mural to like an actual live action shot.
She's been eating shrooms.
She's like, they told me this would help me see it better.
It's called a transition. Oh my gosh!
I kind of hope.
These are
they have,
special
they're moving at the same time.
Yeah, I kind of hope they have one of those artistic effects like they did in any of the other movies. Whenever they do any
Man
sort
of
of
Steel,
flashback
when
history.
they had that, the Kryptonian heritage scene.
Imagine if they animated like the ships here, and then it match cut to the actual ships coming up with the Atlanteans getting off and the Vikings getting off. Yeah.
And the Martians.
Thanagarians.
Yeah, the Thanagarians.
Thanagarians there, yeah.
And look, she looks terrified. She knows that she can't. And this shot right here.
Oh, dude.
Oh, I missed it too. I went too far.
What'd you miss? Oh, yeah.
This shot right here, I think, is absolutely beautiful. You see everything, and that doesn't even help. It's the same frame.
You just take us out, yeah.
Yeah, it just takes us out. Well, yeah. So that's how you make it look even better. You just get rid of us. Like, oh, there we go.
Ooh,
no, but
that way you only see my Twitter handle in the bottom left corner and nobody else's.
Never do that again.
Never do that again. And Dawson, no, nobody cares. Okay.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care. Let me tell you, we don't care.
So this image right here is so beautiful, and it has so much depth, and the light coming through the stained glass windows or just windows in general are just absolutely beautiful. Yeah. It really has that Lord of the Rings type feel to it.
Yeah, like there could be 4 hobbits there.
4 hobbits? Yeah,
exactly.
Sauron and Saruman. Okay, anyway,
you just called Sauron.
Have you ever even seen the Hobbits?
Yes, the Hobbits.
The Lord of the Rings is what you're referring to.
No,
okay.
it was, okay. Well, I mean, South.
Okay, I won't
Oh
do
my
it.
God, really? Get out of here.
Well, first off, that was
Andre
derived from
Nickatina.
your bad take, Andre.
And then this is another good shot right here where we actually see Granny Goodness, which was a huge shock to most of us when we saw Granny Goodness, in this scene, which would make sense why she's there and why she's in this movie, and Desaad as well with his like huge, what do you want to call that? I was gonna call it a moo-moo, but I don't make fun of it because it actually looks really cool. And as it moves on, Steppenwolf talking to Desaad, his armor then coming off, which is amazing. The Legion running over the hills.
Did you say Legion?
Yeah,
Man, you're just mispronouncing everything today.
I won't do it. But just everything about this is just so much better. And that Steppenwolf right there looks incredible. I said incredible with all the parademons flying in the background. I mean, and even that isn't been improved on. The explosion, that scene looks incredible. I mean, it's just
that
so
shot
much.
of Aquaman staring down Steppenwolf is so well lit. It's just like, yes.
I mean, there's just so much going on here. We can spend a whole hour going over this. There should be a lot going on. So real quick, Andrew, what was your favorite scene of this trailer?
Ooh, good question. Well, it has to be the apocalypse stuff. I feel like that's just, I have to. No self-proclaimed. Oh no, it's right there. Sorry, I take it back. It was right there. If you want to talk about
go back.
Yeah, the hand. It was just his hand.
That one?
Oh,
yeah.
That's
I'm a guy who's on the record as saying that not being able to see Captain America think about picking up the hammer is like will always be my greatest regret from a movie ever. So to see Superman thinking about how his power is working with the world around him, I could not be more here for that.
Well, and for me also on this scene, I'm appreciating things on your behalf. That's what happens at this point after we've done this much together. I know that for a long time, Dyce, before Justice League was confirmed, he always said that the ending of BvS with the dirt starting to lift is in a way its own perfect ending to you say it more eloquently than me, but like it's its own ending to the story, and it means something. And yes, there's a story that could continue on, but also in what it kind of implies about the nature of Superman and the hope of return, and etc. You don't need a sequel in order for it to have value and be a good conclusion. And so when I see this and I'm like, okay, well, you're going to love the Superman and the black suit and the powers, but also the fact that is what it's harnessing this is the continuation of what's with that dirt rising. Is so cool.
And what do you think he's standing on, Steven? Is that a plaque of some sort?
I've seen people theorizing that he's on the moon. But if that's the case, is there? I can never remember. Is there an actual plaque on the moon, like by the flag, or is that?
I don't remember. I haven't been in the moon yet, so I
can't.
Yeah. Last time I was there,
Independence Day.
Yeah.
Well, I think theories that people have had that I kind of lean towards, just because it's the only thing that I can personally think of, is that of course you have the crashed Kryptonian ship, which is in Heroes Park, right, which is still there. Maybe you could have gotten there, and there's still like the destroyed monuments and stuff from that fight with Doomsday. So maybe that's just a remnant of that. But then at the same time, like you saw the monument that was already there. It was big old slab stones, so they didn't have necessarily plaques on them like this. So at this point, it's anyone's guess, and it's really dark. So I mean, it's kind of hard to tell the surrounding that's around him. You know,
well,
it's pretty dark on the moon.
Zack Snyder having Superman stand on a plaque on a rock is not going to lack intent. So whatever it is that he's standing on is important.
Yeah.
And then here we see Cyborg's first flight. This is when he takes off on the rooftops. You can see the other buildings in the background. And then there's just so much going on. It's a trailer. There was the tank scene, or the War Machine, as you said it was called.
Yes, it's War Machine.
It's beautiful.
I mean, and you're right. It does seem like this would be part of a montage. I mean, after you described that, I firmly now believe that that's what we're going to.
Yeah, he's just standing there like a boss.
Yeah, it's like
a boss.
Well, and then imagine the camera like pans out, and he's got like a chain hooked up to Doomsday's body.
Yeah,
just dragging it or something.
Dude, yes. Sign me up for that. It's like freaking Achilles and Troy just dragging it around.
Yeah. That's
give me my son. Let me bathe him one last
Let
time.
me place 2 pennies on his eyes.
On his eyes. Jacob, I firmly disagree with that. I agree with Rishnan. There we go. There's
Rishnan
accurate.
Is not getting it right.
He's not getting it right. But yeah, this movie's gonna be so amazing.
I love how the Flash runs through or into Cyborg. One of the two. I don't know. It's pretty awesome.
I love how that's the shot from him touching the mother box.
Yep.
It's
repurposed.
So I'd love to see how they actually resurrect him this time. It's different.
Yeah.
They're not gonna rock and roll it, kind of like George Lucas there, and just we'll just reuse the same footage.
Right.
Yeah, because him running in the background, that was the same footage they used when he was in the Kryptonian ship to resurrect Superman.
Right.
And we know now that that's not how it happened.
Right.
And they just repurposed the footage, as Dawson was saying.
Just said yes.
Yeah, but it's astonishing.
Thank you for restating everything that was previously said before. You're a great podcast host.
I really like it. I do.
And wash his body.
Yes.
It's from
Troy.
Troy.
Yeah, wash his body. Let me clean his feet.
All right, we're getting off the rails here.
Let me clean between his toes.
Let me clean his corns.
And then this shot too. I mean, when you see him running towards the explosion, and the blast is actually in reverse.
It is
going back in time.
Everything's kind of getting built. The structures around. That's awesome.
It's I feel like I probably pointed out too often, as I do a lot of things, but I get a lot of satisfaction out of that shot because there was a moment I was in a DM with someone talking about the idea of Flash reversing time at the end and how that would be visualized by Zack Snyder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's whenever I see that shot, it's amazing because I remember being like, okay, well, we know this is how he puts things together. And I described basically something just like this. And so it was really cool to kind of see it come up and be like, okay, the way Zack would do it would be to show time slowing and then reverse. And then you'd see the explosion going back into itself as things reassembled. And then it cut to the trailer. And I was like, I did it. But I think it's a testament.
He stole that from Tenet.
But it's like just recognizing the visual language. I think that's you can kind of predict how he's going to do things because like this is how he communicates. These are the words that he uses visually. And so I think it's a testament to kind of how that he does have his own visual language because you could assemble this kind of stuff without him.
Yeah.
No, really, really cool. I mean, that shot right there of the Amazonian or the Amazon.
No, that's Wonder Woman. Oh, there you go.
That's not Wonder Woman. But no, it's really, and you can see the ships. They're flying away from her because they're in full retreat. And then Ryan's cameo, which is the dead parademon on the floor.
At least I was in the movie.
Yes. At least you were in the movie. But yeah, no.
Didn't you hear Andre's the Green Lantern?
Oh yeah, that's me. Yeah. I don't have the image. You can't bring. I didn't bring it up because I don't have the image loaded up.
You don't have the image? I can send you the image.
I might as well do it. Send me your compromise cut of the image.
Compromise cut. It's the original.
No, it's not.
No,
I'm not gonna display it. And then also here in this scene, the Joker has a machine gun on across his lap.
Yeah, he has a machine gun. Ho ho ho.
I mean, do we think that this is the same machine gun that that Batman has later on that has a Joker car attached to it?
That's not.
It's a different gun.
Yeah.
It's a different gun, Andre. Know your guns.
I don't know my guns. I don't have a gun.
It's an M4. It's not a machine gun, but it's an M4.
It's not a machine gun.
That's where you're wrong. It's an AR. Yeah, he looks amazing.
He really does. And look how healthy Ben Affleck looks. That always supposed to switch joy.
No, that's Jared Leto.
That's Jared Leto.
Not that, you dingus.
And he doesn't really call that healthy, to be honest.
Hunga.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
You know what I was talking about.
So just really, really cool stuff, you guys. So everyone in the chat, hey, lay down some fire emojis and thank both Steven and Andrew for being here from BvS by the minute. If you guys haven't done so yet, go on to your Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever it's located and definitely listen to BvS by the minute.
You don't know?
I listen to it on Apple Podcasts. That's where I get mine.
We try to be everywhere.
You try to be everywhere, exactly. So Steven, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at smcolbert or on Screen Rant. Where I do some writing sometimes, as well as obviously BvS by the minute and Justice League by the minute. coming. Well, we've done a few newsy episodes, but the actual breakdown is going to start, right after the movie drops.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Let's see. So then we got Andrew. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Andrew B. Dyce. You can also find me on Screen Rant. And if your girlfriend, wife, or significant other makes you watch The Bachelor, you can find me at The Bachelor Podcast, a fantasy draft podcast.
Does your wife make you watch it, or do you?
Yeah.
Or do you watch it on your own and then make a podcast?
Oh, yeah, that was not referring to me. No, I am there whether she wants to be or not.
He does it by himself. He's like, okay, guys, we just got done
Bachelor by
watching-
the minute.
Yeah, Bachelor by the minute. Okay, minute 12.
Oh no, I could never.
Yo,
The
how many
bombshell was
episodes
dropped.
in the season that? It's like 20, right?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, man.
It's like I'm never gonna get done with this episode.
Oh my dice. You absolute dog. Okay, and so guys, thank you so much for being here. This was so much fun to have you guys on here. And
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we were talking about a topic that we talk about every single
week.
day.
Yeah.
We're all
every
huge
day,
fans
yes.
of almost every day.
Mhm.
So it was really cool to have the opportunity to have you guys on here and talk about BvS and Justice League and Wonder Woman 1984 for what it was.
For some reason.
Well, I just felt it was necessary at that point. Might as well.
Yeah. It was,
know,
it was great conversation.
I put a lot of work into it. This scene right here.
What scene was it?
Be facts. Call it be facts.
I didn't see the scene. What was it?
Nothing.
You don't want to see it again.
You don't want to see it again. All right. Hey, guys, thank you so much for being here. And for everyone watching at home, stay tuned for next week as well, because the Four Nerds will be back at 7:30 on Thursday next week with host, who is it? Is it Dawson?
I believe it is me hosting, yes.
It is you hosting. And Dawson, who do we have next week?
Next week, we have Robert Meyer Burnett from the Burnett Work coming on to the Four Nerds Show. And he's been on here before, but it's going to be his second or third time on here. He was on an official episode, then he was on like a Justice Con episode.
We did the Crisis.
Yeah, Crisis on Infinite Streams. But this will be another episode with Robert Meyer Burnett. We're very excited to have him on, talking about all the updates and developments in Hollywood and such. Great guy to talk to. Fantastic guest, and we're very excited to have him on.
And that's going to be Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the Four Nerds channel on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification button so you're always notified of any new episodes of Four Nerds put out. And with that, you guys...
that was it?
Well, I don't
feel like I'm watching Raw. That was epic. Yeah, that was wicked.
Hell yeah. That's how we do.
I know. I wish you would just keep playing the music in the background, and that would be the
Yeah, no, throughout the whole show.
StreamYard, you got some work to do.
You got some work to do, StreamYard. We have to go to Streamlabs. I don't want to do that. Oh, man. And, the one thing...
Restream.
Restream. The one thing that we didn't talk about, and I'm just going to bring it up because it was what this is the reason why I brought up Wonder Woman.
The barrel roll with your kid?
No, not that.
Oh, no. Okay.
The reason why I had brought up Wonder Woman was because I was alluding to this, but I never got to it, was this image that we saw. But that's going to be for another time because we're out of time right now. So
freaking snuck Bernie Sanders in there. Look at you go.
Where? Oh.
That's the first thing I saw.
None of you guys, nobody mentioned it.
Like one of these things just doesn't belong here.
He's that ancient. Might as well be on there.
He's that ancient. And yeah, Burnett for the win. Yeah, he'll be here next week. It's going to be a lot of fun, you guys. And you guys, one more time, a round of applause, and thanks to Stephen Colbert and Andrew Dyce for being here as well. Yes, they kicked ass, and this is a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. All right, you guys.
And thanks for having us.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks for
anytime. Yeah, and we'll do it again. And guys, we will see you next week.